Good evening. Well, it's night at this point, pretty much. Bit of a late stream, but today, joined by Darth Killhoon, we're gonna be discussing Star Wars again. Um,
Yay, it sounds
uh,
like we already talked 15 hours about this.
yeah, exactly 15 hours. We did our Star Wars political stream, but today, right now, more of a cultural criticism, so to speak. We're gonna be talking about the sequel trilogy.
Yes, the bane of everybody's existence if you're in the Star Wars community.
I, I actually kind of have a bit of a nuanced view on the sequel trilogy personally. Um, I don't think it's not great, but at the same time, there are some elements to it that I like. But otherwise, it very very disappointing. Like,
Um, yeah, I can kind of deconstruct it too and try to apply some actual reasoning to it, but if I was to, when I first saw it, I just viewed it as a dumpster fire until I had to abstract it all. And that's kind of just giving it a little too much credit, though, on my end.
so when you first found out, so I guess we'll start by doing some backstory or whatever. But when you first found out that Disney purchased Star Wars, this was back in 2012. What was your initial reaction?
My initial reaction, this was 2012, so I was literally 11, so I didn't quite wrap my head around it. Because like at that time, I was just a kid and I'd go to Disneyland and go to like the Star Wars part because they had Star Wars stuff at Disneyland way
You had
before
like
the
Star
purchase.
Tours and stuff, yeah.
Um, uh, and I didn't think much about it until, and this was also when I was starting to get into the EU. Like I started playing the old Battlefronts and like the Knights of the Old Republic game, and the Old Republic especially was one of my favorites. And next thing you know, I see on YouTube. I watched a lot of these older Star Wars channel like Gensarai One and Evanova 95, and they're going on complaining about how Disney just axed the entire EU, and
Oh,
just
this
to
is
me,
2004. This is 2014 by this point.
yeah, it was a gradual evolution, but overall, like I didn't think much about it in 2012. But as it progressed, I just slowly gone and hated Disney more and more for making this purchase because I just saw the deconstruction of this franchise before my very eyes.
So I remember I was in high school when I found out that Lucas had sold it. It just came as a shock um, to me at the moment. Like my first reaction was rather negative. Like, I mean, I was like, hey, at least we're getting more Star Wars films, but at the same time, I was like, honestly, I actually don't remember what my initial thoughts were about us getting more Star Wars films. I'm sure I was excited, yet at the same time, I think my excitement was sort of overshadowed by the shock that Disney purchased it. I don't know why I was upset. I mean, it was good that I was upset. My concerns were well placed, but I had always liked Disney. But either way, I remember making a Facebook post or something about how George Lucas is like a scruffy nerf herder and a sellout. And but either way, so yeah. Then I was kind of indifferent because, especially because the movies they said not coming out until like what 2015 or whatever. And so, but then um, 2014 they canceled the EU. That was devastating. Like I was very upset. Like I didn't understand. I mean, I understand why they did it, but I don't know why they had to do it that way. And they're just like, oh, it's the Clone Wars in the movies. That's canon. I was like, okay. I mean, like, yeah, I understand that they're doing that, and they're not definitely not going to adapt the Thrawn novels. It's just not something that Star Wars would do. They don't adapt their own books. But either way, then they got the story group in charge, and then some of the newer canon stuff started coming out, and there were some of the earlier books I thought were legitimately good. And so then when I saw the Force Awakens, yeah, it was like it was kind of a loose remake of A New Hope, but regardless, I thought it was enjoyable, and I thought it was like setting some stuff up, and I was like, wow, I can't wait to see like with these next two films that they could go in so many directions because the whole thing is The Force Awakens was very, very vague. It was just a very vague movie, at least. I mean, stuff was going on for sure, but just regarding kind of where the story was going, it just seemed like, wow, this could be going in so many directions. But no, it went in a direction, all right.
Yeah, it went in a direction. I know you're a fan of the Last Jedi, but
I know, hot take, but I actually did like it. Definitely has its problems, and we're going to be discussing those. And each time I've seen the Last Jedi, the more and more problems I have with it. However, yeah, I still don't dislike. I don't understand like how people could have walked out of the theater during that movie because they did. Like, I mean, that's I understand why people might not like it, but I don't understand how like it would enrage people that much. But I,
I
either way,
I just like I wouldn't have had as much of a problem with it, I think, if they would have actually like kept true to like already established in universe lore about like the Force and stuff, because I it's like little things like in the Force Awakens, like when Rey overrode um Kylo Ren's force powers when he was trying to pull that lightsaber towards him, because that is like a master level feat in like every single
well,
EU.
no, no, but you need to remember, Ray is the bestest ever.
Oh yeah, yeah. She's the bestest ever. She has the
She has all
wham
the
and
Jedi's.
she has the wham and power behind her. So um uh yeah, the power of wham and compels thee. But um yeah, and just like how they played, like she could already understand how to do a mind trick when like it took Jedi years to even attempt it with confidence, and she just does it like that. And she also convinces Daniel Craig, aka James Bond, to drop his rifle, and I'm like,
Oh
what?
yeah, that was Daniel Craig. Oh, also,
Yeah.
do you know that the fat guy who's like, oh, you get two portions. That's Simon Pegg.
Simon Pegg, remind me who he is.
He was in Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, The World's End.
Oh,
Paul.
okay, that guy, that
Paul.
guy.
Remember the one? No, the Alien movie with Seth Rogen. That was a funny one.
God, Hot Fuzz, that was a classic. Okay,
Yeah.
I know who
Argent
you're talking about
Angel.
now.
For the greater
Uh,
good.
yeah, why can't we get a Star Wars like Shaun of the Dead or Hot Fuzz? That'd be fun.
Yeah, no, like I've said before, Star Wars is I see it as more of a setting. Like I
It's a
think you could,
backdrop for
yeah,
stories. It's the
you can
same
set.
thing with like Star Wars and 40K are both like the two sci-fi universes that are like that, where it's just a backdrop and you can have an infinite amount of um uh stories stories. Like you could have horror, like an that one horror novel, Death Troopers,
Oh yeah, yeah. No, honestly, so Death Troopers was good, but the really freaky
the
one
Blood
was
Harvest one
Red
or the Red
Harvest. Yeah,
Harvest.
which
Yeah.
actually takes place during the Old Republic, like vanilla. It takes place. I think it was um, 3,643 BBY.
Yeah,
So
I'm
yeah.
actually yet to read that. It's like you know how many Star Wars books there are on the EU, and they're all on the reading list.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's one I still need to read. But yeah, it's like Star Wars, and I don't think Star Trek really worked as a good
I
backdrop
I
setting.
was
But
literally about to say the same thing. Yeah, no, because the thing is, there are certain themes that need to stay consistent for Star Trek to be Star Trek. Just that sort of kind of idealism, uh,
the
this,
liberal idealism.
the liberal ideal, exactly. And I mean, it
Well, then
works for
Star
Star
Wars
Trek,
is more.
but Star Wars, it depends, I guess, on the story itself. You can have different themes. Like, I mean, there are recurring themes and motifs throughout the Skywalker saga, which makes sense. I mean, with the exception of the sequel trilogy, because that wasn't even really a trilogy, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, no. But then you have but other stories like, yeah, you had Red Harvest, and then you have um, like Knights
Like
of the
the
Old
bounty
Republic.
hunter game,
I,
and
I, I never played that one, but yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then Knights of the Old Republic 1 and Knights of the Old Republic 2, even. Yeah, technically, Knights of the Old Republic 2 was a sequel to Knights of the Old Republic 1, but they were two completely different genres in terms of story. Like Knights of the Old Republic 1 was more of a classic hero's journey, Just very simple narrative. I mean, very very good writing, but just in terms of the narrative, simple. Whereas the second one was more of a was definitely more psychological and philosophical. And yeah, but either
Yeah.
way,
Um. Uh. But yeah, that's the power of a setting like Star Wars, where you can feel that the universe is huge and that there is so much potential for infinite amount of stories, and that really lends the universe a lot of power. But what disturbs me is we've just not been seeing a whole lot of that. Like Disney has been making the Star Wars universe just feel way too small for what it is supposed to be. Like my main issue with the sequel trilogy is it's always like these handful of people against an entire empire, and like you hear mention of the Republic, but you never see any of it. You never
you see it in like one scene when like the oh, what was the planet? It was like Hosnia Prime. Um,
something like that.
gets blown up by the by the by the what's an even worse word for death? Like what's an even worse death?
Um, Entropy.
No, I don't know
I don't know either.
the
Um,
uh
uh,
the Uber Death Star or whatever. I was trying to think of a clever name for Star Killer Base, which is literally one of the dumbest. I
yeah,
mean,
it's just
the Force Awakens was probably the most. It was the most well liked one, I guess, by people. But either way, it was the least. I'd say it was actually the least original out of
I
the sequel trilogy.
yeah.
But this,
Well, the
yeah,
it literally just repeats all the same plot points that you see in A New Hope, and um uh, that just definitely was a big turnoff for me because I was really starting to get into like storycraft and writing and stuff, and it's
hmm
like the the sheer laziness that I saw in the screenwriters when they were making that film just disgusted me. The fact that they're lifting every trope, they're just replacing faces. It's like instead of Obi-Wan, you have Han Solo, inst- and instead of Luke, you have Rey.
but
Um,
there's but even the yeah they were choosing like oh Obi or Han Solo replacing Obi. But the thing is, yeah, like on the surface that's the case, but it didn't work. It didn't really work because the whole
well, yeah, they
thing.
still had to keep to their characters, of course, but
Yeah,
and like my favorite line out of all the sequel
yeah.
trilogies came in that movie was just when Han Solo pushed Finn aside and said, "That's not how the
That's not
Force
how the
works."
force works. No, no. I say that. I'll actually say that in real life, like in context, and like it gets laughs out of people. But either way, yeah, no, I agree. But
And that's what I
um,
just say all the time. Every time I'm seeing some bullshit Force explanation throughout all this trilogy, when I know how the Force works, I'm just quoting Han Solo the entire trilogy through.
yeah, no, yeah. Either way, though, so we're in a little bit. I guess we're going to get into. So actually, how do you want to start? I'm trying to figure out how we're gonna start this. This is kind of an impromptu one, but we're going to be going over the problems with the films, and then also the things that we feel like maybe they did right. Um, but and then I think we're going to talk about maybe things. I think the fun part will be we're going to do some, I guess, script doctoring. Talk about story beats that we think would have been better, or how it should have been, at least within the framework of the the general story itself. I think that might be fun. But either way, um, I, I think I should start by saying that I think that the Star Wars sequel trilogy is basically emblematic of the artistic zeitgeist we're currently in, where everything. First of all, and I had a stream. I don't know if you saw it. I had a stream on philosophy and cinema with John David Ebert, cultural critic and philosopher, author. Has a YouTube channel. Yes.
I started to watch it. It's on my watch later. I've been busy.
But so anyway, so yesterday we did a stream together, and I made a point that it seems like today movies it's all remakes, with superhero films, remakes, and rom-coms. And well, I mean, I know I'm being a bit facetious there, but either way, it's just
it's unironically all true. Like,
yeah,
it's the way I describe it is every single work of fiction is based off previous works of fiction. Like Tolkien, when he wrote Lord of the Rings, it was based off Beowulf and other.
Actually, I'm gonna push back on considering Beowulf fiction. I don't think that it would classify. Well, yeah, no, because I mean, fiction is, and that's the thing. I mean, that's what bothers me when people kind of conflate fiction and mythology, because like fiction is deliberately written as a mean of like it's obviously on the surface like not true, whereas like mythology, it's supposed to sort of convey a deeper metaphysical truth about the human experience. And same with heroic poetry and epic literature and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Beowulf, man.
Like Tolkien, he based a lot of his works off of like both Catholic theology, Catholic teachings, Beowulf, other European folklore and tales, and made into his own fantasy world, which is one of the most beloved. But he kind of set the standard a little high for fantasy, and everybody you're seeing in the fantasy world, most people try to meet that level that Tolkien set, and because of that, they are just, especially in the fantasy world today, you're seeing all these authors just repeat the same tropes over and over again with very little creativity, where they might change like one thing and go with the story and not have a truly unique their own world.
I remember like I started writing sort of like a fantasy book, which I ended up outlining the entire plot eventually, so I like knew what the whole thing was. But either way, what it became as I continued working on it, and I haven't like abandoned it entirely. I've just taken a break for a couple years, but it became ultimately sort of like a kind of a political. It became too many political parallels, and I mean that's fine and all, but it's not particularly original. And so at this point, I'm like, honestly, the best niche I could think of would be to make like the underlying theme being the perennial traditionalism.
Yeah, that's especially like, I admit I do this too as a writer myself. Like I'm working on this alternate history series that I was deeply inspired by The Man in the High Castle.
Oh, great! Yeah, great book.
Yeah, I was like, I decided, well, what if I took this plot premise of us losing, well, just the world being taken over by Germans, but I was like, well, what if
you'd love that, wouldn't you?
Well, yeah,
we're both Krauts. So
yeah, I unironically would love that, but I was like, you know what? I'm deeply Catholic. I love old Bavaria. I love old German tradition. So I was like, what if it was the German Empire, like the embodiment of German traditionalism that took over the world, instead of the futuristic National Socialists that took over? But it's like, it's still the same premise, but it's like you change one thing, and that's what most authors do, and a lot of us fall into this pit.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people don't know how to make their own stories truly unique. Like, you can take any premise in the world. I love what Brandon Sanderson says, where he said one time that he told his friend to write a book about Pokemon, the Roman legions, and it was something else. And he made that challenge, and like a year later, his friend wrote a book about like a Roman legion transported in time that uses like Pokemon like creatures that they captured, and apparently it was a bestseller too. Like you can take any
Interesting.
random premise in storytelling and make a good story, but it's up to how you go about it and understanding how to formulate a story. And if you're just lifting plot points from another work, it will just feel unoriginal and bland and boring.
Hmm.
And that's
Yeah.
especially my main problem with most of the sequel trilogy.
Exactly. Because the thing is, and I know each trilogy has its own aesthetic. It has its own kind of um, look. Is that, if that makes sense? Like visually speaking, and so like episode 1, 2, and 3 kind of have that same feel, that same like maybe in terms of the type of cinematography, or almost like the type of shots that it does. Like for instance, I've noticed the sequel trilogy does a lot more close-ups, at least in terms of the cinema, whereas there are always more people in like certain shots in the prequels. But either way, also
Um,
the prequels were also much larger scale than and it showed what was going on in the galaxy. Whereas one of my biggest problems with the sequel trilogy was that it was just on such a small scale. Like it only focused on like these people just kind of traveling together, doing stuff, fighting space fascists, and whereas at least the prequel trilogy, and that's what I think it does best. The best thing about the prequel trilogy was the world
yeah.
building, and
Well,
yeah, like for
also the
instance,
prequel trilogy
yeah,
knew how to write villains too. Like
yeah,
he, Count Dooku wasn't necessarily a evil
no,
man. He was
he's
just
lawful
the
neutral. He's
yeah.
lawful neutral.
He was very lawful neutral, and that's why he made a great compelling villain. Was because he actually had good points, and you could realistically in his shoes identify with him. But because of the story parameters, he's the antagonist. Same with General Grievous. If you've read his backstory, it's like, oh my god, I don't blame this guy for hating the Jedi. Um, uh, and it was just a lot of this. What I loved about the prequels was that you could hop in anybody's shoes and identify with them and like understand where they're coming from. And it felt like a truly immersive world. Well, then in the sequel trilogy, their villains were so cartoonishly evil.
Okay, I actually liked Kylo Ren. I actually think
I mean,
he was
well,
the
yeah,
best part of the.
he was the best written character of everyone in the sequel trilogy, but that's a leap because
I think
nobody
he
was
was.
very well written.
I mean, I think he was like
They had a lot of
generally.
they had a lot of potential with him, and they did some.
It was the Rise of Skywalker. I think that really ruined him,
Mhm.
in my opinion.
Like I think that you could definitely see that they were setting up something with him in the Force Awakens, and I thought, oh, well, him and Rey are going to be swapping places at the end, and um uh Kylo's going to be returned to the Jedi, and like logically, if you were going to look at that film and just based off that, you would think Kylo's going to return to the light. Well, then Rey, she is this aggressive berserker that is probably tapping into the dark side to fuel her rage-induced force powers. Like
You
that's
see,
all I
now
was getting
that would have
from.
been a good twist, a good subversive twist, because you haven't really seen that in Star Wars. Like it's like a fake out where you think the hero is going to be this one person, but turns out that that's not the case. Like that's, but the thing is, I feel like Star Wars, owned by Disney, they're too afraid to make those kind of risks, and that's my problem with some of their EU that they're doing. They're trying to keep it too close to the Skywalker saga, and like even like so I liked the fact that they started kind of doing spin-off stuff. Like Rogue One is probably, I might get a lot of hate for saying this, but I'd say it is the third best out of all of the Star Wars films. I would
Um,
say it's right behind. It's only beat by the original and Empire.
I would have to rank it number 4 on that scale because the original Empire and then 3 I say beat it. Um, uh,
Okay, I mean three. I definitely think that Revenge of the Sith is a better film than Return of the Jedi. I mean, maybe not as a film, like as a work of cinema, but in terms of it was definitely more interesting, and
Yeah.
it was less because I mean, Return of the Jedi had like kind of some boring parts in the middle.
Yeah, that's why it's like when I was a kid, especially, it was hard to sit through Return of the Jedi. Like I purposely tried to avoid that film. Um, but Revenge of the Sith, like it was the good balance of like action along with story and some drama sprinkled in and character development and well also character deconstruction too, with especially Anakin Skywalker. Um, and it was overall like the perfect balance, I'd say, of all the films.
You want to go
Um,
into more detail about that? That's kind of interesting. Um,
the deconstruction of Skywalker, or which?
yeah, the deconstruction of Skywalker.
Well, the deconstruction of Skywalker really, it was all throughout the trilogy, but it was the most heavy. It was the most packed in the third episode because in the first one you saw his separation from his mother, which, they didn't really show the mental harm that did to the kid in that film. But in the second film, of course, he started to go into that deconstruction where I'm talking about like his character himself deconstruction, not like you're deconstructing his character for him. Like it's George Lucas breaking down like this heroic figure into this slowly turning him into this barbarian over time.
So I actually, so something I should say, so for the longest time, I had been like, oh yeah, no, the acting is so bad, from like Hayden Christensen especially, and then it took me a while to realize. Then I realized, you know what? He's actually not a bad actor. Number one, uh, actually won awards for this one movie. I think it was Shattered Glass, where he played a. It was based on a true story where he was like a writer for the New Yorker who fabricated stories, and so yeah, and he like won some kind of award for that, from one of the big film festivals or something. But then um, also the so and then another thing I realized, I was like, oh, Anakin is like so creepy in episode 2. And it's like, what did Padme see in him? And I still don't know what Padme really saw in him. But then I think the reason that people were kind of thrown off is because they were expecting sort of a more heroic character, a more traditionally masculine or at least charming in a sense. Like, I mean, that sort of a charming vibe you got from Luke Skywalker in the originals. But that wasn't there with Anakin in the prequels. And the thing is, I just realized, you know what? It's not that he's like. He did a great job depicting a horny virgin teenage monk.
Yeah,
That's exactly like he did a great job. And yeah, it's like, oh my god. But the thing is, I don't think it's so much it was the acting so much as it was that it was just George Lucas. He's a fantastic from a conceptual level, like an ideas person, bigger picture, and he's a good director, but he's not a fantastic writer.
yeah, his dialogue is a bit cringy. He should have left that to a professional.
I am haunted by the kiss. Didn't he say something like that? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm haunted by. I'm forgetting the exact line too, but
Doesn't
it's
matter.
something along those lines. And it was if you were, I'm like trying to think like through his head because if you were a Jedi, going through puberty, and of course you're taught like you're trying to reinforce what is comfortable to you, which what is comfortable to you is your Jedi like kind of nihilistic morality, um uh or and slightly I don't know, it depends on the Jedi if they're either nihilistic or if they're altruistic.
Well,
Like I'd
basically,
say
they're just. I think it depends on the Jedi and how they kind of interpret the code.
yeah,
Like,
but I'm trying to reinforce the set code that you have been taught for about a decade at this point. To abandon all attachment and limit your emotions and restrict your natural urges, which is fundamentally opposed to the will of man. Which the will of, especially most young men, like most young men, even if they don't want to admit it, have the hidden desire to be responsible. To like I was recently listening to, this may sound cringe, but Jordan Peterson on the deconstruction of the young man. And what is causing most young men to go into these depression states in the modern world is because of the lack of responsibility that society is now placing upon them. And the young men crave that responsibility to have a woman by their side, to have kids, to have that, and to provide for them. Like, and I can kind of see that in Anakin. Like, he has that underlying urge
And
to.
his desire to be a Jedi was more of just something he wanted as a kid, just as an escape off the planet. But then, in a sense, it's almost like he entered a whole different form of slavery, and it goes back to kind of like a Friedrich Nietzsche's concept of like slave morality, where they're basically slaves to dogma. Because I know a lot of that was based on his criticism of the Catholic Church, but I think you can apply that analogy to the Jedi in this instance,
Yeah,
because I mean,
like,
even the Sith code, it ends through victory my chains are broken. It's about uh, the Sith. The Sith ideology is essentially a kind of Ubermensch, hyper individualist, um, self self determinist, search for self mastery type philosophy, whereas the Jedi are like extreme stoics mixed with basically what I've seen the Jedi as, and George Lucas even. So George Lucas explained that the Jedi philosophy was inspired um, by two things: Eastern religions, and so it's inspired, yeah, by like Eastern Zen religions and sort of introspective Oriental esoteric traditions, and his Methodism because he's a Methodist, and so he said that was sort of those two seemingly contrasting ideas were sort of merged and then formed the basis of what he saw as the Jedi philosophy and the concept of the Force itself. But then I also see, especially in the Jedi, there's a heavy stoic element to it as well. Like Yoda definitely has a very Marcus Aurelius vibe to him. Personally, at least that's kind of how I see it.
your historical comparison. Yeah, I can see that. But yeah, the whole slave morality, um, uh, it definitely did bind Anakin, and when he rebelled against that in the second episode, it was kind of a, I hate to use the term revolution, because he didn't quite wish to tear down the system, that he was inadvertently rebelling against when he married Padme, which was the, like, of course, in the first film, he was more. It was high, that high school crush that you just never got over, and that
Yeah, no, but the
became
thing is,
an
he was
obsession.
9
Yeah, he was
at the
9,
time, but in it, he like, yeah,
and he made his perception around that. And
yeah, it's almost like he didn't necessarily. I don't even like. I'm starting to question whether he actually loved Padme or if he loved the idea of Padme, and he sort of came up with this sort of romanticized idea of who she was.
yeah, well, when you're separated from a woman for a decade, never seeing her, and just like only seeing her on like the newsreels and stuff, and wouldn't you, like,
Yeah,
if that was like the love of
but I
your
mean, if it
life
was
since
somebody
you
I
was
met when I was
9 year old?
9, I don't know. Maybe if I met them when I was like 16 or something, that's
Well,
different. But
yeah, but a 9 year old also, like, is that very impressionable, and that was like the first time he ever probably saw a genuinely attractive human woman on Tatooine. Like, just thinking out loud, because Tatooine is mostly a hut world. You wouldn't expect like many decent looking women being there, and he probably didn't have good access to like Star Wars version of the internet.
What is it? The extranet? No, that's Mass Effect. The
It's
HoloNet.
yeah,
HoloNet.
the HoloNet. He didn't have good access to that, and all he would hear with these, like, he said the smugglers would talk about the angels on this one planet. And he asked her if she was an angel. Like, he thought she was that beautiful. Like, as a 9-year-old, like, he thinks that this is everything. And then he had this image in his head of this perfect woman that he became infatuated with, and it led him down this. Like, I'd say the Jedi didn't help at all with their teachings, because they're not very they're very rigid and unadaptive. I would say that they're like the 16th century. Like, I'm Catholic myself, but the 16th century Catholic Church was pretty rigid at the time and didn't know how to deal with change or like coming up with these issues like that. And I'd see that as like the downfall of the Jedi was their just rigidness,
Their inability to reform.
Yeah. Well, their inability to even deal with basic problems, like we have horny teenagers in the Jedi Temple.
Yeah, I think, and honestly, but to the church for a second, if you think about it, in a sense, yeah, it ended up atomizing Christianity, but at the same time, the Reformation was, in a sense, a good thing for the Catholic Church because it basically was a wake-up call to realize, oh crap, we need to.
Well, it kicked out the Counter Reformation.
Yeah, exactly.
The Counter Reformation was definitely a revitalization of that proactive Catholic Church that hadn't existed since like the 1200s. Like the Catholic Church used to actually be a very proactive force throughout the world.
It's like the Jedi.
Yeah, like the
back
early
in the Old
Jedi.
Republic era. Yeah,
where they were this proactive religious force. But I'd probably say after the taking of Constantinople, the Catholic Church just it saw like its death on the horizon with this great Muslim force coming, so it retracted into itself and became too rigid and reactionary.
What would the equivalent then be that with the Jedi? What force did they see, or was it the fact that they just become complacent amidst a decadent, decaying, corrupt civilization?
Well, yeah, it was also the Catholic Church had kind of like retracted from the struggle too. So I could kind of see as like, well, they weren't fighting. Islam was the main enemy of Christianity at the time. So like, but Islam had
then this was like what's interesting, up until I think it was just a little bit before this point. And it's interesting because we don't think about it like this today because it's not how we're taught in school. But Islam wasn't seen as a separate religion; it was actually just seen as a heresy.
Yeah, both religions saw each other. Well, I think Christianity saw Islam as this desert religion, while then Islam saw Christianity as more of a heresy against Islam, because Muhammad supposedly was the last prophet, and Jesus was the prophet before him.
Speaking of Messiah related things, I think maybe it would be a good idea to go into the concept of like the chosen one, because of course you have the Sith chosen one, who's the Sith-Arai.
Which it's arguable if it's Darth Bane. Like Darth Bane claimed himself to be the Sith-Arai, but
honestly though, what I find interesting is it was Anakin was said to be the chosen one, but at the same time, watching it again almost makes me wonder: is this prophecy actually real, or is it just part of this sort of myth within sort of Jedi lore to perpetuate this meta narrative of sort of this optimistic eschatology? And it's like, in that case, yeah, even though Anakin may have brought balance, did he actually fulfill that prophecy? Because it seems like it's interesting, because if that was like a prophecy that was like thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years old, wouldn't you think that would make basically have be more consequential in the end? Because it's like, okay, what, he kills Darth Sidious, brings balance to the Force for like what, 20 years,
Yeah, effectively 20 years, and like this was also the same in the EU. Like the balance in the Force didn't last very long in either um uh Disney or EU.
Yeah,
So arguably, I don't think that they ever had that intention in mind of him. Like it was a prophecy, yes,
and that's
but
that's where the and
and
that's
Mace,
where
but Mace Windu started to have doubts about the prophecy towards the end too.
yeah, no, but the whole concept of the prophecy of the chosen one, I think that's Lucas's sort of Protestantism.
Yeah, because I'd say that Protestantism is actually a lot closer to Judaism than what Catholicism to compared to Judaism was.
Except for maybe Anglicanism and Lutheranism.
Well, yeah, Anglicanism because that's still a very high church one, but like what Martin Luther was getting into with the whole legalism aspect into Christianity was a very heavy lifted from the um uh, Semite religion or
But
the
what's also really interesting is you see, I've always seen a lot of parallels, and I really I don't want to get off topic. This is just something I feel like it would be good to mention. But there's a lot of parallels between Muhammad and Oliver Cromwell. Like Muhammad basically
yeah,
was or the Cromwell of the Middle East, and really interesting. Both really fascinating figures. Like
the
on
Puritans coming to
yeah, I used to hate the Puritans so much when I was a kid. They used to annoy the hell out of me. But then, but like eventually, when I started reading the metaphysical poetry of the 17th century, like people like John Donne, this was in an English class I'd taken like several years ago. I developed sort of like a strange sort of appreciation for them, and at least sort of their ethic and their convictions, even though they were kind of crazy still. But eventually, they mellowed out and became Presbyterians. But either
um
way, back to the Star Wars. I feel like we should focus mostly from now on the sequels, which is why we're here
yeah.
tonight. But I think that one thing that I think that should be noted is, and I think this is pretty brilliant about how um, the the entire Skywalker saga is a tercet. Like you know what
Is
a tercet is, right?
a tercet. Remind me.
Oh, so okay, so you know what a couplet is, right? So basically, you'll have a um, a verse in a poem that will say something, and then in the next line, it will say the same thing, convey the same point, but say it in a very different way. You see this
Hmm.
in the Bible, especially the Book of Genesis, all the time. And if you think about it, it's the three trilogies are the same thing. It starts with a sort of a not well, of course, Anakin's not an orphan, but sort of this young, sort of lost figure on a desert world who ends up being by chance or by the Force, whatever, ends up getting taken off the planet, and they sort of have their own hero's journey. And even though Anakin's hero's journey doesn't really he doesn't even really have a hero's journey, so to speak. It's if anything, it's throughout
It's
the Clone Wars. But either way, no. But then there's this. But then once you get to Revenge of the Sith, Return of the Jedi, they sort of are the inverse of each other. And then the Rise of Skywalker, in a sense, is a echoes, of course, Return of the Jedi. But then they also all end. Each trilogy ends on a the desert planet again. Well, actually, no, never mind. The episode 6 doesn't. So wait, never mind. But either way, no. But these trilogies, each one echoes the others, and I know it's not telling the same story necessarily, but it's definitely a very at least from a technical perspective, at least from a sort of a stylistic perspective.
mirror each other.
They mirror each other. It's symbolic.
I'd say that instead of just making the point that they all end on a desert planet, is more it is the return to normality, the return to peace. You know, like how at the end of every hero's journey, it's always the hero returning home. It is that returning to the peace, returning to the normality.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you always have like Sidious and Darth Vader looking at the Death Stars, like that's their normality, their peace. You see Owen, Beru, and Luke staring out to the sunset. That is their peace. That is their normality. You see the party on Endor. That is their peace there. And then Rey burying lightsabers, I guess, is her piece.
Okay, yeah, no, interesting. And this is something that I felt like probably wasn't the best thing to bring up when we did sort of our political series, but one of the themes, because I kind of want to do a Star Wars philosophy stream at some point to focus on that aspect. And
all KOTOR 2 there.
Oh yeah, all KOTOR 2. But either way, so I think an interesting theme though that does appear in Star Wars is the concept of history repeating itself, if that makes sense. And I think if you think about it like that, episode
nature of history.
Yeah, episode 7 does work. And in a sense, it's almost like not even necessarily cyclical, but sort of that dualistic sort of Zarathustran, like Ahura Mazda versus Ahriman struggle between good and evil, light and dark, and eventually one side will triumph, but then it will be balanced out by the other side. And that just seems to be a consistent force, no pun intended, throughout not only the three trilogies, but also expanded universe as well.
Yeah, you always see this duality. You always see this, especially like the Jedi Sith always being at war with each other some way or the other, but always
it's like a perennial conflict. It's like it goes
like
back
the
even
Hatfields
before.
and McCoys.
Yeah, no, but like back even further. No, it's like I think the best analogy would be between East and West. And when I say East, I don't mean like Far East in this sense, but sort of the clash of civilizations between the Western world and what it would now be the Middle East. And it goes back thousands of years, and it was even all
in Islam.
Yeah, well, that's the current that would be the more recent expression. But you even have it was already sort of an ancient conflict even by Herodotus's time in the 5th century BC. And Herodotus, who wrote the first known history book, so he's known as the father of history. There could have been historians before him, for all we know. I wouldn't doubt if there were, but either way, so he wrote the first like major history book that that's still around today. I'd recommend it for anybody who both loves, who not only loves history but likes the idea of reading history as it was perceived back in the ancient times. But either way, so he opens the Herodotus opens his histories by talking about because he wrote this shortly after the Persian Wars, and so what he's trying to do is he's trying to explain sort of the cause and effect, because he's kind of the one who really introduced the precedent of cause and effect into like our understanding of history and things happening. But so he talked about so this we've been at war with Persia, and it seems like there's been this struggle between East and West for the longest time, even in the Trojan War, going back there, and with in Canaan, in the Levant, going back even before that. And so he traces this conflict going back thousands of years even before him, or at least more than 1,000. And it's basically the whole thing is like they kept kidnapping each other's princesses. Nobody knows who started it. That's really what begun it. But either way, yeah. But either way, it's interesting because you have this sort of similar dichotomy between Jedi and Sith. going back millennium. And the thing is the nature of the Sith, what the Sith are, it transcends the Sith as as an organization itself. It goes back way even before that too. It's like even if the Sith are gone, there's always going to be sort of a dark side successor to it. Kind of like how the Sith were gone by the sequel trilogy, but you had Kylo Ren, who's effectively a Sith, and then you had whatever those cultists were on. That last planet, the one that sounds like a constipation medication. Exegol, yeah.
I need to take my Exegol pill today.
Yeah.
Couldn't take a crap in 3 days.
This live stream is brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends and Exegol.
Exegol. Don't take it if you're pregnant, planning to be pregnant, or whatever the fuck else they say.
Yeah. Yeah. So, let's focus specifically on the sequels now. So,
all right.
Episode 7, I think it's established. Okay, enjoyable enough. And I think I accepted at the time that it was pretty much a rehash of A New Hope, because it's like they're trying to just like start out small, start simple, to kind of, they want to feed people that nostalgia, so to prepare them for the really great thing that's going to happen next, aka
yeah, for me, when I
or
first
at least
watched
what we thought was going to be the great thing.
yeah, at least when we thought when I first watched it, I just went out of the movie theater thinking, was this J.J. Abrams' really shitty fan fiction of A New Hope?
Yeah, it kind of seemed like that in a sense. I mean, I could see. I mean, it wasn't shitty. It was. I mean, there was enough like variance for it to kind of seem like its own thing, but at the same time, it was. But the way I interpreted it as, and that's why I think it's believable, at least from as an in-universe explanation, and even as a meta explanation too. The idea again of history repeating itself.
Yeah,
And
I just hate it when history is literally like the same rep beats over and over again.
Yeah,
like Darth Vader walking through the hallway. Oh, Kylo Ren walking off a shuttlecraft of a newly secured territory / ship. It's and then like a Princess Leia shooting at a stormtrooper. Well, and then it's with a Poe guy shooting at Kylo Ren. It's like, okay, you're taking a lot of the same beats.
it's actually before we actually get into the more narrative aspects. Talk about characters, because I liked the characters in the the Force Awakens. I thought that they had promise. I mean, it wasn't they weren't super fleshed out yet, but I think they had promised, especially Finn. I thought Finn was like, I was like, oh, they could do so many things with this guy. He has this sort of moral conflict going on. Former stormtrooper. We haven't really seen a character like this depicted in the movies. Sort of a bad disillusion, like basically a faceless stormtrooper who now has a face, who's disillusioned with what he's doing, which he knows is wrong. And so that's what I liked. I liked the direction they were going with that, but
I like the initial direction, but after he started shooting other stormtroopers in that hangar bay, I was like,
oh yeah.
I'm like, and then him cheering on with Poe, it's like, I
thought that scene was pleasant, was charming. Their introduction scene in the TIE fighter, that was, I know, it just reminded me of, I don't know, it just seemed like that would be a fun way to make a friend, like unironically.
It would, but I just can't detach Finn from him being a former Stosstrooper. Yeah, I know I bring up my German every time I hear Stormtrooper, but like he used to be a soldier. So my
not just a soldier, a child soldier.
Well, yeah,
like,
it's not it's just the soldier archetype in general. It's like I'm also a soldier myself. So and I just don't see that in him. I see him as like, it looks like he was just picked off of the honestly of the streets and thrown in stormtrooper armor. That's why he has such a casual disregard with taking
Yeah,
other
he
stormtroopers'
seems like
lives.
just like a recent. He seems like a conscript almost.
Well, yeah, it's like he was
Which I mean,
just pulled.
technically he is, but
Well, even conscripts, like they're still trained soldiers. Like I don't get the whole idea that's spread around on the internet. I especially hate YouTube videos that like go on like analyze militaries. Like, oh, this is a conscript army. They have such low morale. It's like most of the time, conscript armies were the best trained armies in the world.
yeah,
Just so, and even though Finn like fits the definition of a conscript,
because
like
but
he would
the thing
be.
is, it's not the same kind of conscript because it's like he was recruited. Was the whole thing like it was really convoluted and it's not an efficient way to build an army, but they would go and that
Yeah,
cringy
they
quote that
kidnap
there's
children.
that cringy quote from the Rise of Skywalker: "Harvest the young,"
Yeah, it's like
and
harvest the young. It's just like, oh my god. But
you're
it's
trying too hard to sound like some sort of evil
it's
like
it's like no, but still like you're. I mean, there are certain psychopaths in the military that probably wouldn't mind taking the lives of their own friends that they've been sleeping with, that they've been eating with, that they've been ranting on and talking about with, like forever, like, and he's just casually shooting them. Like, I could see a civilian honestly doing that. Like most terrorists that are recent civilians off the streets, like they're the ones that commit atrocities, and like it's never the soldiers. Like
yeah.
if you look at atrocities that happened in World War II, who did most of them? Oh
Not the
right,
Vam. It wasn't the Wehrmacht.
yeah,
It was the paramilitary
yeah, it was the
folks like
SS
the
most of the
SS,
time.
and then before
And
that the SA. But
Einsatzgruppen, and even like did you know that in the city of Lviv, it's now in Ukraine, but it was in Poland at the time. And when the Germans invaded the Soviet Union, it was in the Soviet sphere of Poland at that time. When the Germans invaded, the local Ukrainian population went on a rampage, slaughtering all the Jews in that city. And it was actually the Wehrmacht that had to stop them from just the pure wiping out of them. And it was done by civilians, not, it wasn't even organized by the Germans. It wasn't encouraged by the Germans. It had to be halted by them just because it was a pure, unadulterated, anarchic slaughter. That happened also in Lithuania as well, where the local population just started killing all the Jews, and it had to be the Germans that had to stop them from just killing them all.
yeah,
And it was, you always saw that it was the soldiers stepping up and putting themselves between civilians killing other civilians in their rampaging mobs because
but I like to think that the stormtroopers of the actual Empire did that. Like at least kind of in
well
my head, I like.
they did do that, like in the EU they did that all the time.
Oh yeah, that's another one of my problems with the prequels. So I mean, the prequel trilogy had a bit of nuance, which I liked. Uh, and then the original trilogy didn't have much nuance in terms of the good guys and the bad guys, but that's fine because it was a classic hero's journey. The morality is very clear. It's just sort of like in that classic Beowulf sense, where of course Grendel and his mother are the bad guys, and of course Beowulf is the hero. He's the mercenary that the Anglo-Saxons bring in from Denmark or whatever. Um, the, but either way, so the morality is clear cut, and then you get the prequel trilogy where there's more nuance. But then you have the problem with the sequels is it's almost like it was sort of a return to the hard, clear cut good versus bad. With Kylo Ren maybe being the only exception, but sort of this clear good versus bad, but not even in the same way. It just didn't feel authentic. It almost seemed like at least the different characters and even just sort of the setting itself in the world was almost a parody or not a parody necessarily, but an overly exaggerated kind of satire or not no satire, but just sort of an over the exaggerated version of the original trilogy.
Yeah, I would definitely say that because they make everybody that they label as villain cartoonishly evil,
Okay,
and they
so
make
I think the one character it actually worked for was General Hux. Who, fun fact, that's my one of my best friends growing up, who I went to high school with and then went to college together.
shameless
That
plug. You
that
know somebody famous.
that's his cousin. Yeah, but yeah, no, there's also a Weasley. But either way, so Hux. The thing is, with him, I did what I thought of, what was great about him was how he was a basically supposed to be basically a because you know how like the Imperial officers in the original trilogy they were so stuffy, but the thing is it was intentional in like the script and stuff, and they would take themselves so seriously. But then when you look back and you watch them, you're like, oh my god, they're so like they're so formal and stuffy and everything. And then Hux was almost like a an attempt to kind of like a commentary on that, purposefully making him like over the top. He was basically a self parody, and I thought it was he was like almost a meta character, and that's what I liked about him. He was a dork, he was a dweeb, he was a fucking idiot, but at the same
It,
time, he wasn't a good villain, but he was a good kind of device in a sense.
he was a plot. Yeah, well, most of the characters in the sequel trilogy were mere plot devices, only used for that. Um, uh, and I think Hux was definitely the archetypal plot device character, where he was the he is gonna post Kylo Ren for reasons that they never explain.
Oh,
Like,
that was actually probably one of the funniest lines though in the Rise of Skywalker. It was basically like what was it? It was like what? No, I don't care who wins. I just want Kylo Ren to lose. It's like
it
oh my
just,
god, it's like the most petty thing
but
ever.
but it's like you're he is the uber, like, I'd probably say nationalist that you'd see in a movement like the First Order, like the ultra nationalists become the officer class. And I just couldn't see that from somebody like Hux. Like, it just seems like a breaking down of like the past two films where he was.
General Hux gave me some like Charlottesville 2017 vibes.
He gave me some like Rudolph Hess vibes.
I don't. I forget which one has it. I'll look him up later because I kind of want to say I have
Rudolph
it.
Hess was like the he was this like he was the esoteric Nazi, the one that tried to get into the spirituality of it. Um
Did he
uh
know? Did he know Evola? He seems like that's somebody he'd be buddies with.
yeah, but he was actually he tried to fly to Britain to
Oh yeah, no, okay. We had. I think we. You mentioned this on the political stream. I think that we had.
Rudolph
Yeah,
Hess.
he flew there and he was
Oh,
trying to end the war and negotiate. And
and he
then
just he just sat in prison.
that's such a Hux thing. But what I found strange is like why are they picking? Because I know there's a line that Snoke said in towards the beginning of the Last Jedi. It was, do you know why I keep this guy or this like that sniveling idiot around? It's because he's loyal, and he's easy to control, and that it makes sense, and that's sort of like okay,
The
that
Yes Men.
it's like
It,
yeah, no, those are the people you want to have kind of
yeah.
in your
It's like the. I would also say a historical parallel, which they probably did take, was after the July plot to assassinate Hitler in '44. You saw this purging of the Wehrmacht officer class of all the
Rommel was one of them.
yeah Rommel, like all the ones that they saw as reactionaries and monarchists, and just overall like very ambiguous to their loyalty to the
Or
National
they
Socialist Party.
basically they purged the reactionaries from the Nazis because I know the Nazis were originally formed like it was. I mean, of course, fascism, Nazism is a fundamentally like extremely modernist ideology that aesthetically takes some aspects of sort of. They basically create like a a fake romanticized tradition.
They
Um,
take the tradition and then modernize it.
yeah, like a futurist. It's pretty futurist actually, but
Yeah.
either way. So yeah, they did that, and then But then you had like the monarchists and the conservatives in Germany who didn't really like the Nazis, but at the same time they're like, I mean, at least from what they look, they seem at face value. And mind you, this is like early in the 30s. They're like, oh, they're a bunch of populist idiots, but at the same time, it's like they'll. It seems like their vision is a little closer to our vision of a restored tradition, as opposed to the Weimar Republic. And
Or
then
the Communist Party, which is the second largest party in Germany.
exactly. So yeah, and you had and so you had like the monarchists and the people who um, the reactionaries who joined the fundamentally modernist movement,
Which,
and then
unironically, you know that general in the last movie.
yeah, okay. So I actually wanted to get there in a sec. We'll mention him in a little bit, but yeah, just say what you're going to say about him.
Well,
The
I'd say
Allegiant,
that
wasn't it like Allegiant General or something?
yeah,
Which is kind of a cool title. I will admit that is a pretty badass title.
I mean, yeah, he is the reminiscent. He is like the German aristocracy during National Socialist Germany. He was the voice of like the old wisdom from the old empire. Trying to bring back with the new, like, work with the youth, guide them, give them their wisdom, like the old German generals too. And I just got those vibes from him, and like he was the reactionary monarchist that got purged in 1944. That's
Yeah,
who he.
and
Well,
then
then,
no, but then the thing is, what's interesting is so. I think the whole thing is so the the First Order is founded by a bunch of like exiled imperial remnants. That after the fall of the empire, the more extremists and the ones who were like no, because like the actual empire settled for peace and was confined to these planets in the core worlds and the inner rim. But then yeah, no, but then the more radical elements of the empire, including like those sort of true believers in the aristocracy and stuff, went to the unknown regions. And but then yeah, no, but the leaders, I mean, the young ones at the time would eventually, or the younger ones, the ones who were like maybe the lieutenants and lieutenant commanders, they would be the ones who would rise and take command then. And then you would have like their children that they would give birth to out there, or in Hux's case, Hux was like a little boy when his father went out there, and he would succeed him. But yeah, no, but the guy, the Allegiant General in The Rise of Skywalker, was basically, I mean, if you look at his age, I assume he's probably 50s or early 60s or something. He would have probably been like like a a freshly promoted commander or something around the time that the Empire fell.
I'd probably more put him around the rank of like if I'm going to use army ranks, like a lieutenant or a captain, a field officer rank.
Okay, yeah, no, so yeah, captain in the army is, hold on,
that's a company commander, which is
no I'm just saying in the Navy that would be
that's a colonel.
That would be a pardon.
Well, the equivalent of a captain in the Navy is a colonel in the army.
The equivalent of a commander is a captain. Isn't a rank in the Navy. Captain is the position you are on a ship. Commander is the actual rank.
Well, in the U.S. Navy, it actually is a rank too.
No. Captain is what the rank of captain is. It used to be captain, but now it's commander. So like, we'll talk about that later. But.
Yeah, whatever. But like an army captain is probably the highest rank I would give him. Like when the Empire fell initially.
Oh yeah, no, he's a general. So yeah, he would be. He would be army. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so he would be a captain at most, probably a lieutenant in the old Empire, and definitely was one of the ones that were lucky enough to flee into the unknown regions, which, I mean, probably did. Like, he provided a good, like, grounding of, like, the experienced military knowledge, because he probably led, like, a Imperial Army unit on some world. He knows how the military functions. He knows how it's supposed to function. And
Probably
keep
got
these,
it. Probably got an officer position in the first place because he probably came from like a wealthy core world family.
or that, or he competently was appointed to the academy. We don't know.
Well, we don't know even enough about that character. Like he was barely a character. He was just there, and that was one of my problems actually with the Rise. So I'm gonna say, and when we get to our sort of script doctor segments, we'll probably do for the last hour. I'll go more into detail there. But either way, I think it was.
And by the way,
I think he was I think he was an unnecessary character. Like I understand the point that they're trying to go for, but the thing is, like he was just there, and it's like, who the fuck is this? But basically, what happened is, so Hux is in it, but then so he seems like Hux is some sort of some high up guy. He's like the main general in charge of the.
he's the chief of staff
Yeah,
of the
no, that
armed
and
forces.
that's what he is depicted as in um, The Force Awakens and in the Last Jedi, and he's clearly he's supposed to be next in the line of, well, Kylo Ren was next in the line of, well, actually no, I don't think there was a clear line of succession for the First Order, but I remember Hux was about to shoot him after the the fight scene, and when Kylo Ren was incapacitated, he was about to shoot him. You see him pull out a gun, and he slides it back in when Kylo gets up. But but yeah, no, you get the sense that he's like, okay, he is of a rank where he would be taken seriously had he taken over the First Order. But then, and then the Rise of Skywalker comes around, and it's like he's basically, I don't know if the Allegiant General ever gave him orders or anything. I don't recall. I think he basically treated him like he was his superior, and it's like, wait, okay, where did this dude come from? Why should I care? And then he just died, and then Hux just dies like a bitch.
Yeah,
And,
just
and it's like,
literally
oh,
just picks up a rifle and shoots him. It's like, oh, okay.
and
But
I have, and I'm not going to mention it now, but when we talk about ways we fix the movies, in a little bit here, I do have a way that I would have handled that very differently, and I'll explain then. But
and I'm just saying, I just looked up the rank structure of the officer ranks of the U.S. military. A captain is a legit rank. Just telling you.
in the Navy,
Yeah.
I thought it was like, okay, whatever.
No, commander is beneath captain. Captain is the equivalent of a colonel, and it's right below a rear admiral. So
You know what?
captain,
You're absolutely right. No, what's funny is I come from a Navy family, so I should have known that.
yeah, it's like I wear boots for a living, and I even know that.
I might be confusing it with the Royal Navy, which is funny because the rules were there was commander, master and commander, and then post captain, and those were like the three. That was like the equivalent of lieutenant commander, commander, and captain. But either way, so moving on though, in terms of, so we basically covered episode. Actually, no. Let's finish talking about the characters. Who do you think some other important ones we should go over? I mean, Ray, of course, we should probably save her for last. But
Besides psychopath Finn, that is the least soldier-like former soldier.
traitor. Remember the traitor memes?
Yeah, it's like traitor. It's like, yeah. Honestly, God, I wouldn't even consider him in the soldier class because he does not have the attitude. He does not have the honor-based system that, like, I would say that most soldiers today, like that are in the U.S. Army, are not really honor-based. But that's only because, like, right now there's no wars, so it's more of a it's honestly a materialistic army right now until we get into a war. But during times of war, it's always this brotherhood. It's always this honor that defines us. And every time,
that's have you read Ernst Jünger before? Storm of Steel. Because that's basically all what it's all about. Fantastic. Good. Best. It's like the definitive war autobiography. World War One soldier.
I started reading it when I was in my AIT Advanced Individual Training, but the guy who owned the book, like we were graduating next week, I only got through a few chapters, and he took it with him. So
I know aren't some of the books on like those reading lists are like Storm of
no,
Steel and Star.
There's
I'm thinking
no official army reading list.
No, I'm talking about for OSC or OCS.
For officers, yeah, they
no, but like for instance, so some of them are like Storm of Steel.
Captain Shiny Head,
Starship
Mr. Nevermind.
Starship Troopers. The Hornblower books. This is a fantastic story, but either way,
somebody wants us to talk about
Phasma. Phasma was useless. Phasma was just an excuse to put a cool character in the same. They're basically trying to replicate what they were doing with Boba Fett.
It was and make her a whammon.
It wasn't even that. Like, I mean, I liked that they cast Brienne of Tarth to play her.
If we actually saw Brienne of Tarth there.
Yeah.
Instead of just a shiny chrome helmet, which
basically, I remember her nickname before we got the name was Chrome Trooper. But here's the thing: I think a lot of the names they gave the characters in the sequel trilogy were kind of cringe. Like they were just like so try-hard. Captain Phasma. It's like
General Hux.
General Hux. Kylo Ren's okay. Rey's okay.
He does a discount Darth Kaitis.
Yeah, that is true. I'm trying to think of like some other. Snoke is one of the worst.
Snoke.
It's like why Snoke?
It's what? It's like I don't know how to process that as a name. Just that's like the most uncanny, just unsymbolic name.
Can't take it seriously.
Yeah,
but
it's a cartoon name.
It really is. It sounds like the name of like I don't know, like some dumb old man or something.
Yeah.
Mr. Snoke, old man Snoke.
Yeah, that's what he turned out to be. He was just this dumb old man that nobody cared about that did like a few things with the Force before he had a lightsaber through his gut.
Yeah. Captain Phasma, basically it seemed like they were trying to artificially sort of replicate the whole Boba Fett phenomenon. Like, Boba Fett was a side character that they just kind of threw into Episode 5, and then he reappeared as, like, a very, very minor villain who originally, of course, like, he was intended to die, of course, in the original movie, but they changed that because basically, like, people saw the movie and it's like, wow, this guy's really cool. And I know he originally made an appearance in the Christmas
special that nobody talks about.
Yeah. Still better than Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, still better. Nevermind. I was hoping too that it would have been a Darth Plagueis reveal, but
I didn't like that theory when it was first proposed. However, in hindsight, it would have been a lot better than what we got.
Yeah, it's always the hindsight is 2020, but it's like even back in the day, it's like we all knew that like the whole Snoke was kind of a dumpster fire to begin with. And we wanted it to be better. We genuinely, the Star Wars community wanted the sequel trilogy to be better than it was, and that's why we had all these theories like, oh, Snoke was Darth Plagueis. Oh, Grand Admiral Thrawn is running the First Order. Blah blah.
I couldn't see Thrawn running an organization like the First Order.
I mean, I couldn't either, but that was one theory that was thrown around. It's like you're trying to make this a trilogy better than what it actually is.
Exactly.
And what the creative team is allowed to do.
Yeah, and it was but hold on, what were we saying before Snoke? Or what were we saying before then?
We were talking about Phasma, the throwaway character.
The Boba Fett point I was making. So so Boba Fett naturally, even though Boba Fett was never intended to sort of be this sort of hyped up character, he was just there and people liked him. And so then they're like, okay, let's expand on his stuff because he's like this little throwaway character. We can make up this whole backstory and everything. became a fan favorite. Basically, he basically became this like anti-hero with a kind of, I don't want to say tragic backstory, but sort of this who definitely grew up on the or had seen some things in his life, who who's kind of amoral at times, because
Well, he was the he was
he's
the
just a, as his father said, he's just a man trying to make his way in the galaxy. But eventually he finds Mandalore's mask and becomes leader, returns to his father's people and becomes their
but
leader.
in the
But
EU, yeah.
yeah, in the EU, and then they're like,
um,
okay, Boba Fett's such a fan favorite character. Let's do Phasma. Phasma looks cool. Let's make her look cool like Boba Fett. And the thing is, they're intentionally trying to do that, and they hyped her up. They even wrote a decent backstory novel for her. It wasn't bad, but
uh,
it wasn't the best. It wasn't the best one either. But they did that, but then it's like, okay, so I thought the garbage chute thing was funny in the first one. Um, that was funny. However, it would have made what would have made more sense would have been if with Phasma either she never appeared again in the Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker, and that was it, and or she wasn't killed off in the Last Jedi and appeared in the Rise of Skywalker as like sort of maybe a sort of because like she fell in the fire in the Last Jedi during that hyperspace ram, and maybe like she comes back all deformed and stuff, but like masked off, and it's like evil Brienne of Tarth with a gun. I don't know. I thought that would have been at least interesting, but it's like, okay, if you're gonna like try to make a character, at least write a character. Don't just do something because it
don't do an
looks cool.
archetype. Make a
So,
character.
but she wasn't even an archetype.
Well, they tried to archetype, like you said, Boba Fett, but they were intentionally trying to do that. Like George Lucas with Boba Fett initially was like, "Oh, he's just this cool-looking bounty hunter," and just this silent warrior demeanor, like struck awe.
Because originally in the original cuts, Boba Fett didn't say a single word. But then in the special edition re-releases, they had Tamora Morrison, who plays Boba in The Mandalorian, and of course he played the clones in the prequels and Jango Fett. Yeah, but
And also Republic Commando game.
yeah, he played the main guy, right? The
No, he played all of them.
no. Each of them had different voice actors.
Well,
That was part of
I
the
think
thing,
he
and it's like
inflated his voice for the other ones, or I could be
no. One of them
mistaken.
was the voice actor of Karth, though. I remember.
I think that was the sniper guy, if it
Yeah.
was Karth.
Either
But
way, though. So yeah, you had and then he was brought in to just dub like two lines or something for Boba Fett. It was like "As You Wish" and "When Do I Get Paid" or something like that. Or wait, it was either that or they redubbed it and somebody else in Boba Fett like had a much deeper voice or something. I forget which it was, but either way.
um,
But yeah, no, Boba Fett is the thing is when these characters become popular, you can't try to make them popular artificially. They'll become fan favorites naturally. It's an organic process.
it's like you have to. The thing about creativity in general is like you put out these characters, you put out your story, and you write these characters as the individuals that you intended in mind, their personalities, their traits, their will, if they have major flaws, make them have their major flaws, etc., etc. You put this out, and then you look at the reaction, and you gauge that reaction about who's the more popular character. You still don't change your character based on these reactions. You keep them consistent to how your vision is, and that hopefully will just perpetuate your character up. But no, they had to push Phasma as this, we intend you to be a fan favorite character, and that artificialness could just, it was seeping through the film. You could just see them pushing it and pushing it more and more, and that turned people off to it.
I didn't understand Captain Phasma. Like you wouldn't think that she'd be very high up, yet she's treated as like one of the top people, like the one who's responsible for training all of
It's
them. It seems like
the
she has like
military has
different roles depending on what scene she is. like sometimes it seems like it's implied she's the commander over all of them and the head of the stormtroopers. Then at the same time, it's just like she mentions her unit, so it would imply that, oh yeah, she just is head of that particular unit. Yet then she's in charge of like the executions in that other one, in like the second one. But then at the same time, she directly goes and talks to like Hux and Kylo Ren, which would imply that, because I mean, if she were just like a middling captain, she wouldn't go and
Yeah.
talk to like the heads
Well,
of a government.
one, you know how the in reality that would all work if she was truly a captain. If she was truly, like, I don't even know, like, they just threw captain in there because captain sounds cool when they really
Kind
in
of like with
army.
Commander Cody, where a clone commander is technically the same rank as a Jedi general. I mean, of course, the Jedi outrank them, but basically, those legions in of those clone legions that are not commanded by a Jedi are commanded by a clone commander.
Well, the way I saw with the clones was the Jedi are field generals, and they were given that rank because they would command over all Republic armies in the area or on their front, and it would be headed by one clone legion and whichever local forces that they had at hand in the campaign, and that's why they held the title of general. Well, then the commanders were the commanding officer of the clone legion themselves that they were attached to. So they were the legion commanders. Well, then the Jedi were the front commanders. They commanded the front or the whichever army or something you're talking about. That's always the way that I saw it. I wouldn't. They weren't equal in rank. The Jedi were still above the commanders.
Yeah,
But the way that Captain Phasma, like in a real military situation, would go about, one, they would see that this junior enlisted stormtrooper just open fired upon and helped a prisoner escape, and open fired upon several stormtroopers, killing many of them. And then they're doing a case study on him, and they're getting the eyewitness testimonies of like probably his NCOs and his his team leader, his squad leader. Then they'll move up to his platoon leader, like a lieutenant, and then at the end they'll actually talk to his company commander, which probably wouldn't have many interaction with those junior enlisted, and he would just give his general generic, which I'm Phasma is this generic captain at this point, um, opinion about the matter. And then there will be a formal investigation at the battalion level about the effectiveness of this unit and what caused this.
okay. I feel like the reason they didn't go into all of this detail because
I'm just saying, like, that
no,
would be
no. The thing is, I feel like the sequel trilogy, one of its problems, and I just realized this as you're saying that, they tried to make it as like not like the prequels as possible. The prequels had all of this like sort of political intrigue that I always thought was actually pretty interesting. Like, I mean, I thought that, I mean, like,
But
I don't
they
know.
also
I thought the whole trade dispute was kind of cool. But then again, I'm like a nerd like that who likes boring shit.
But then
I
also on the military side in the prequels, like, they made it sound believable. They, like, if you had military correspondents there, like actual people like in the military watching the film, they'd be like, okay, well, based on the information I know, there's nothing really contradicting what an actual military would do in the prequels. But then you're seeing this in the sequels, and everybody that's ever even touched the military with a 10-foot pole would know that this is not right.
But then the First Order, if you think about it, okay. Another problem though is that we're never given any indication what the power of the First Order is, because in the first one or in the Force Awakens, we kind of get the sense, oh, they're this fringe group, this kind of like almost like this kind of Islamic State type group, but like the Galactic Empire, and they have like a few Star Destroyers, and they have a Dark Jedi, and they have like his weird Knights of Ren guys who we'll get to later because they're dumb as hell.
The SS occultists.
Yeah, yeah, and so you have those guys, and then you have like a couple main leaders. Like basically, it seemed like, okay, it's a small enough organization that it's only headed by 3 people, or 4 if you count Phasma. And I remember the visual dictionary for The Force Awakens said Phasma was like part of the triumvirate. She was one of the higher leaders. It's like, why the fuck is
It's
she?
a what?
But no, but it was.
No.
I mean, but these
I read
visual
that visual
dictionaries
novel
are written
too.
for children and try to. But either way,
It's a
but
children understanding of like world building.
yeah.
That's like my main problem with it, though.
But so with that, I just get the sense, okay, like it seems they have a small, they sort of have a small chain of like a small kind of council. Not the chain of command seems pretty loose. The low, like, yeah, and they have like 2 Star Destroyers or whatever, and so like that. But
just to address Nevermind in the comment section, the thing about Hermann Goering was like he did lead multiple factions within the National Socialist government, but he also held the ranks of Reich Marshal, which was the highest military rank in Germany. So that, like, you could see him running multiple organizations, but you can't. I cannot imagine somebody with the rank of captain doing the exact same thing. Like,
yeah,
it's the plausibility of it.
oh, unless Captain was her first name.
Oh yeah, captain.
Phasma's her last name.
Right. Yeah.
But Captain Phasma. I don't know what's dumber, Captain Phasma or Snoke in terms of the name.
Well, if you have a coin on the other end, you can flip on it because they're both pretty fucking dumb.
Yeah. No, I have a copy. All I have with me, I have a matcha frappuccino from Starbucks that melted probably about 7 hours ago, and then a copy of Carol Quigley's The Evolution of Civilizations and a lighter.
Oh, hey, why don't you throw that book? If it's the front cover that is up, then it's Phasma, and if it's the back cover, then Snoke is a more stupider name.
Do I have to? I kind of want to, but at the same time, it's a paperback. Okay, let's see what I can do. Front cover. What was it?
Phasma is the stupider.
Phasma's stupider than. I still don't know though. They're both pretty dumb.
They're both. God.
Okay, another kind of dumb name. I like his last name, but his first name reminds me too much of Teletubbies. But Poe.
Oh God.
And, okay, I actually think I think Poe actually was okay, and he was. I think he was actually.
He would have been. He should have been cast as an Asian with that name.
Poe was horrible in The Rise of Skywalker, but I actually thought Poe was one of the better characters in The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi.
I think he actually in The Last Jedi, yes. In The Force Awakens,
I mean, I liked him in The Force Awakens. I mean, I liked the chemistry between him and Finn. And
I think if Finn wasn't a stormtrooper, if it would have been like a sanitation specialist on that ship, that Freedom, then
or was part of just like kind of like on a was part of like damage control or something like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's why I said a sanitation specialist on that ship.
Yeah, no, but basically, like, so not a stormtrooper, not wearing the stuff, but like basically, there's a kind of like those clone troopers, those clone troopers who work on the ships. They like wear those orange helmets and stuff, and just the sort of the non-combatants, and they just kind of do bitch work.
Trust me, don't get me into the rambling about how I hate how the Navy literally makes their job into a rank. Like, you can be a senior janitorial specialist first class on a ship. It's ridiculous. And then you can be a chief chef first class or something. It gets ridiculous.
Wait, in Star Wars?
No, in the actual Navy.
Oh, that's dumb.
Yeah, I know. I absolutely hate. Like, I had to train with these Navy Seabees, and it's like their real rank is like, well, we in the Army, like, we only have private, specialist, sergeant, etc. But then they have, like, for their version of a private, it's called a seaman. Yeah, I know.
Do you think they do you think the seamen, when they're at sea, they see a lot of sperm whales?
Too many.
And I think there's probably a lot of swallows flying around too.
Gotta watch out for the swallows.
Yeah.
Swallows seamen. But like, yeah, their rank is officially called a seaman, And like we would refer to the like us in the army, we're like, oh yeah, your rank is a seaman. But then they're like, no, I'm an equipment operator too, because that's like what their Navy calls their rank, and because they're an equipment operator and they're like second something, so it's like equipment operator two.
I feel like the rank should be called mariner. Mariner sounds better than seaman.
I don't know, but like it gets stupid like that.
But
And
okay,
then
at least I do think it would be cool. Like if there's ever like a space navy, Starman sounds good. Like it also makes me think of David Bowie.
I would just keep them as like sailor.
Sailing in space.
Yeah, sailors in space. Yeah, I just keep it simple, stupid.
Oh, so Evan in chat is saying Poe reminded him of Kung Fu Panda.
Well, honestly, like with the name Poe, they should have cast him as like a stoic Asian guy instead of a quick-witted Spaniard.
They should have cast either Jackie Chan or the guy who played Mr. Chow in The Hangover, the doctor.
Mr. Chow would be a lot better.
Yeah. No, it'd be fun. Yeah, that's actually he's a pretty funny actor. It's like Ken something, but apparently he's actually like a doctor. But yeah, no, but yeah, no, that would have been. But
or that Asian, that Japanese official in the Man in the High Castle.
Oh, that guy was cool. I like, yeah.
Yeah.
But so yeah, but Poe, basically it seemed like he was. I liked that he almost seemed like and I think it was a very earnest and respectable tribute, but he was clearly a tribute or an homage to Wedge Antilles in the X-Wing novels. I got that sense.
Yeah, he was, but Wedge Antilles was actually a
He was a bit cool. Wedge Antilles was cooler,
he was a lot more reserved, and he was a very competent leader.
Poe was just not very professional. But the thing is, Poe was not a good leader, but he was a good pilot.
Well, it's like, yeah, you can be a good pilot all you want, but at the rank of commander, like you're leading a flight squadron at that point. Like you have responsibilities for not just yourself, but your men. Like if you're a lieutenant that's a pilot, like yeah, you can get away with that stuff because you're just minding yourself and your aircraft. But when you're at the rank of commander, you're, I don't know, in the Air Force, or in a Navy, like that'd be a Navy.
Well, no, okay. He wasn't really in anything because remember the Resistance isn't even like it's not even a real military.
So yeah, they just throw around ranks.
It's basically like I think the best example would be it's like if Blackwater versus ISIS. Basically what it is. Blackwater versus and Princess Leia is what's his name? Eric Prince, the guy who owns Blackwater.
I don't know.
Is it Betsy DeVos's brother? But yeah. But either way, no. That's basically
you'll just throw around ranks like they're nothing, and it's like, oh, I'm a captain, I'm a commander. What the hell am I?
No, they just try to find like cool sounding names.
Yeah,
in Star Wars. The Star Wars ranks have always been very
well. The thing about like in the original trilogy and the prequels, they actually like threw some weight behind these ranks before they just gave them to people. Like say Commander Cody, it's like yes, he is a commander of a clone legion. Then you see Grand Moff Tarkin, you can see he's clearly a high up naval officer that's like even above all these other admirals.
Grand Moff Tarkin, he wasn't a naval officer. He was basically he was a military governor, but he was kind of like part of
he was actually like he was a naval commander.
No. He was captain of a Venator Star Destroyer back during the Clone Wars,
and he became an admiral during the Clone Wars too.
Okay, so. This is the weirdest part. So you have Admiral Yularen. I forget if he was a vice admiral or if he was like a full admiral, but then he's like, okay, I'm gonna give up my promising naval career where I could basically, I'm like, oh, I've commanded so many battles, fought alongside Anakin Skywalker. Of course, Darth Vader would probably vouch for him if this was the case, but he could have become a Grand Admiral. Yet he decides to become a colonel in like the Empire's version of the FBI or the ISB.
No,
It's like,
I'd relate it more to the SD, the German SD. They were like
oh
the
god, everything has to be.
no. It's like
German.
it's true because like
Yeah,
what
it is.
was George Lucas basing it all off of?
I think the KGB, I think, was mostly what it was supposed to be. Because I
I
mean, you
mean,
think of the Galactic Empire was supposed to be a hybrid of Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia.
kind of, yeah. Well, yeah, you can make an equivalence to like KGB, SD, Gestapo. Like you could all kind of like merge it into there, like what they were
Yeah,
trying to
there's
get
definitely
at.
some Gestapo elements about them too, but yeah.
But
But so what I was saying earlier, though, we never get like it's inconsistent of the size of the First Order. Like it seems like it's kind of like this fringe kind of like, oh, we're going to carve out this area and build a state and this sort of thing. Because they're kind of like it was a military. It was like sort of like a military organization, not like an actual government. It was sort of this like independent thing. So yeah, like ISIS. And then they have Starkiller Base, and they blew up all these planets, and it's like, okay, they defeated the Republic, or at least destroyed their central. They cut it off. They cut off the head. But then immediately at the very beginning of the Last Jedi, General Hux is like, you guys, you're war criminals and thugs. You are no, we. It's like surrender to the First Order, and like basically saying the galaxy belongs to the First Order. It's like, wait,
and,
how big are
what?
you? I thought like it's like, are you guys can't be as big as the Galactic Empire. And then the First Order suddenly kind of like disappears by the rise of Skywalker. And then it's like then they have all these other ships that come, and then it's the Final Order, and it's like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, it's like from the title scroll in the second movie and the Last Jedi, just the Republic has fallen. I'm just to the overwhelming might of the First Order. It's like, wait, what?
What overwhelming! I thought
Yeah,
that they were. I mean, like ISIS was a pretty big threat in the Middle
but
East. So
the reason why ISIS took over so much land was because, well, what land did ISIS take over? It was all the useless desert and
well, that's basically what the First Order took over too.
yeah,
They took out all the useless planets in the out. Like they took over. I mean, technically, the planet Starkiller Base was on wasn't useless because it turned out, and this made me sad because
oh yeah,
my
it
my,
being
my,
Ilum.
my memories of playing SWTOR and doing the Ilum arc, and then fighting Darth Malgus in the space station above, and doing that like giant running through the trenches in that one flashpoint. It's like, oh no, you had to make it Ilum. So now Ilum is destroyed, and apparently it turned into a star, which was really dumb. It's
Yeah,
like, okay,
yeah, never mind.
and the name
I know.
the name to
I was
star.
getting there.
Do you know what the name to the star? Solo.
Oh god.
It's just like it's like.
But to get to Nevermind, it's like, yeah, I was about to, like, once we were done with this ramble, bring up that ISIS did take over Mosul, but that's like that'd be my example of like, I don't know, Starkiller Base. I don't know, like a major planet or something that they took over, I guess.
I'd say it'll be closer to them maybe taking over Terrace or something. But Terrace that like
you
had
don't
never
see them
truly
take over any planets.
You
That's like
don't.
that's a big thing, except for that one planet in the Rise of Skywalker, where it's like that with that pirate woman that had an affair with Poe.
Yeah, that was weird. Like I basically that they kind of I think the Poe was the worst in the Rise of Skywalker. I think because first of all they kind of got rid of his backstory because I always had this impression. Okay, Poe's like kind of been in the military for a while, better soldier than he is commander, but basically he's all Leia's got. And probably former New Republic. But no, it turned out he was a spice smuggler. And it's like, okay. Like,
what?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that just kind of like jarred me too. I was like, huh?
Yeah.
And it's like they tried to wave it off like, oh, remember when he jump started that speeder on that one planet? You remember that one desert planet out of the million desert planets that he jump started a speeder on? Yeah, he's a criminal. You know, he used to be one. It's like, it's just the ham-fistedness of it. It's like
Yeah,
you don't have to be like some gangbanger to know how to hotwire a car.
yeah. I mean, I don't know how to hotwire a car.
Yeah, it's like
I'm not smart enough to know that.
well, it's
I don't even know.
like
I don't know. I don't even know how to tie a noose, unfortunately.
it like
Because
it.
because after I saw the Rise of Skywalker, I could have. I wish I knew how to tie a noose.
I know, but it's just well, hotwiring a car like if you can actually like get the owner's manual and like see the different wires in it, it's like then you can actually like if you do learn how to hotwire one car and then learn to find the same wires in the next car over, which you kind of need the owner's manual to, um, uh, then theoretically you could hotwire that car as
I mean,
well.
Anakin knows how to hotwire a speeder,
Oh
but
yeah,
he took he took a while to find one that he really liked. You know.
yeah. God.
I don't know. That was a fun. I kind of liked how deadpan um, Anakin kind of was in those movies, but either way. But referring to you got Poe, who started as kind of a nice little homage to Wedge, the X-wing novels. Oh, however, actually, so somebody in the Lucasfilm story group said when asked like, "Oh, who's a better pilot, Poe or Wedge?" Is like, well, in this new canon, Wedge doesn't really appear all that much. You just see him doing stuff in this. He's commander of Red Squadron, like Rogue Squadron isn't even a thing anymore. He's commander of Red Squadron, so he did these cool things. But now the Poe is the bestest ever in terms of
The bestest, because the bestest just fall into all these insurgent groups. It's apparently the best of people that fight for insurgents. Right, ISIS had the best fighters in the world, guys. Confirmed. Disney just confirmed that.
I mean, to be fair,
it's the same logic,
to be fair, Blackwater.
Well, yeah, that's because
the mercenaries. I mean, they're former because they're professional soldiers, but they're former volunteers.
Well, yeah, that's because Blackwater hires out of Special Forces, Navy SEALs, SAS, SBS,
exactly.
etc. Like they hire the professionals that knew what the fuck they were doing. I think they also hire out of the Ranger Battalion too. But like, and they're being.
Remember? I actually want to say real quick. Remember the I don't know if I played Grand Theft Auto 5, but Blackwater, one of the main bad guys.
Oh yeah.
It was like literally supposed to be based off of. I don't know. We'll talk. We should have a GTA stream sometime. I feel like there's a lot
politics of GTA.
Not even the politics of GTA, just the satire about how it's like a sort of a. It's definitely a critique of modern society.
Which I played the shit out of that game. I've played through that campaign how many times? Like probably 8, 9 times already. But yeah, I'm like I don't. The only way that I could see the resistance as being like Blackwater is if the New Republic were literally treating them like Blackwater, like giving them all this funding to do the shady operations, and then they were hiring out to all these professionals. That'd be the only way I could justify
That's exactly my point. What I started to say earlier, but I think I ended up going off on a different point that I thought was pertinent to that particular thing we're talking about. But about how the episodes 1 through 3, in terms of as a narrative, they weren't particularly linear narratives like the with the exception of episode 1 maybe. But like the originals, like episode 2 and episode 3 really just kind of jumped all around, especially episode 2, but episode 3 did it better. But whereas during that time there was like a lot of world building, and to an extent you could argue that there was a little bit too much information dumped. But either way, I think it's still good that we actually got all this context. But the problem is, in the sequel trilogy, we have absolutely no context about like the state of the galaxy, and I feel like it was done on purpose. It was purposefully left like that because of the backlash to the prequels before the sequels became the hated ones instead. But because of that backlash, it seems like they're trying to do every single thing that that the prequels did, including the things that they did right, which was the world building. There was absolutely no world building in the sequel trilogy. We're just thrown right in, right into the middle of things, and we're expected to just kind of like go with it.
Well, they expect you to see the label Star Wars.
But the books don't, like, even the books that were released for the new canon don't even really explain it. They just like are super vague. They're like, oh, they went into the unknown regions, or it's like, oh, we spotted these guys here, or oh, Grand Admiral Sloane is going to go do this thing, and then she's never brought up again, and then it's retconned, and then it basically seems like she doesn't even have anything to do with the First Order. I don't know. I just don't.
It's the way to avoid, and because they know that they don't have a good writing team. So if they can leave it as vague as possible, they can get better writers in there. They hope eventually.
I don't think it's almost like they don't want good writers. They want people who know that will toe the company line, who just want to get paid, and who will basically just listen to essentially what they want. Because I'm sure if they had a good writer in there, let's say they had
Timothy Zahn.
Well, Timothy Zahn. I was thinking like somebody who's like a bigger name, like known in Hollywood.
He was a famous Star Wars
writer. Yeah. Of course, I don't think they'd bring on any of the book writers because they probably
they brought back Timothy Zahn to redo. Like,
I'm talking about the book. I don't think they'd ever have one write a film. But like, let's say they bring in like, I don't think they would ever like Francis Ford Coppola, for instance, or I don't know. Let's say that like if he wanted to write his own Star Wars film, they brought him in as the thing. And then he started writing it. Like, that like something brilliant that he would come up with would not be approved by Disney because it's not simple enough.
Mm-hmm.
Because they just want a simple narrative, and that harkens back to nostalgia, that has no real,
And they expect the audience to have the attention span of a 5-year-old. That's what
which is strange because the sequel movies were like the longest ones. Actually, okay, so Evan is saying Neil Gaiman. I was thinking Neil Gaiman was the first person who came to my mind too, but I decided to go with Coppola, I guess. But
yeah,
Neil Gaiman would be interesting. Honestly, it would be interesting to see like Neil Gaiman, like maybe write a TV show or something for Star Wars, or even just write a Star Wars novel. I don't think he'd do that because he's probably like one of the guys is like he's so good, like probably too good for licensed novels. But either way, or at least that's how people, I guess, would perceive him. So he probably wouldn't even be asked. But either way, so yeah, we went over Poe, Chewbacca. We don't need to go over Chewbacca. BB-8. I kind of like BB-8. He was kind of cute. And then I'm trying to think of other new characters. We're not going to talk about Holdo yet. I think you and I can have a nice rant about her in a little bit. But
oh god,
and then
that'd be a rant in itself.
Oh yeah. So who else? What other new characters?
I guess
besides Rey. Are we on Rey now?
I mean, Rey or the other R, Rose.
We don't need to talk about Rose.
Yeah. Let's never mind. Never mind.
We're
not going to be talking about her.
I will say something about Rose. She was not a necessary character, but I don't think she was a terrible character. I thought that I found her character relatively charming. I thought that it was inoffensive. Like, I mean, again, it didn't really add anything, especially with that whole Casino Planet thing. However, I do think they could have used that actress and that character and actually given them something to do that would have been consequential.
Unironically, I see Rose as like the stand-in for the Antifa dialogue that doesn't really know what they're talking about, but rambles on about the oppression and the patriarchy. Like when she's looking down at the plant, when she's on that casino planet, like she just goes on and on and on about like all these talking
Oh, these
points.
slaves are terrible. Look at those
Oh,
poor.
these slaves, these poor, these animal
Let us save
cruelty.
the animals in the.
And
Yeah, no, it seemed
the
like
first order runs on people like this and blah 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 blah. It's like, oh, okay, talking points.
But yeah, no, but I do feel like they could have used that actress because also why did they make her look so frumpy and like they made her look super chubby too when
Yeah, like
actually the actress is actually fairly attractive.
well, one, all military uniforms make women look fat as fuck. So
But no, but you don't see the other women wearing military uniforms. You don't see you don't
yeah,
see
A-
Admiral
Admiral
what
Purple Hair.
Admiral Purple Hair, Holdo. You don't see her wearing a uniform. She's wearing like a dress, and
Yeah, which just doesn't make sense. You're in a military situation. Although funny thing, I was at the range a couple weekends ago for drill, and my squad leader her mail. I mean, not her mail. Her luggage got lost on the flight, so she was in civilian clothes on the range the entire time. That was pretty
it wasn't like not a
it
skirt
was
or anything.
it was like the Admiral Purple Hair moment, but it was like um uh that is understandable that they misplaced all of her luggage. Admiral Purple Hair probably doesn't have that excuse. She probably has a military uniform in her cabin that she's just not wearing.
Yeah, but either way, so Ray, we've been waiting for this. Ray, everyone's
Oh,
favorite. Okay, so here's my let
the
me
Jaina
I'll get
Solo discount.
I actually thought it was going to be Jaina Solo at first. Like
I
I knew
was
it wouldn't have been
hoping
the
it
same
was.
story, but I knew it wasn't going to follow the same story. But I was like, yeah, you know what? This is probably it would be nice if this is Jaina Solo. And then I thought Kylo Ren, or when they cast Adam, I didn't know who Adam Driver was at the time. It's the first movie I'd actually ever seen him in, and now he's probably like my man crush actor. If I had to choose,
I liked his role in Black Klansman.
yes. It was Flip Zimmerman, and I was like, no, it was what was that line? It's like, "Are you ready to fight for white America?" And he was like, "Oh hell yeah!" It was just funny how he said that delivery, but yeah, no. And then he was also good in that one movie. It was him and oh god, why is Scarlett Johansson, the one where the couple getting a divorce. It like won some awards. And then yeah, but and then oh, I think he was also in a movie. Um, so I'm reading. I haven't seen the movie yet, but I remember watching trailers for it. It's this book by the author Shusaku Endo about Jesuit priests visiting Japan in the 17th century. And you know what Japan was like to Christians in the 17th century.
I know.
But
Yeah,
yeah, and it looks like Evan literally just mentioned that. So yeah, great minds think alike, Evan. Um, but yeah,
Liam Neeson. God, if they would have gotten him in Star Wars movies, that would have been epic.
either way. So, but speaking of Star Wars, back to Star Wars. Ray. My analysis of Ray is that I thought she was promising at first. I actually did quite like her in The Force Awakens, and even when I went back and watched The Force Awakens, I still liked her in The Force Awakens. And from the get go, I remember people saying, "Oh, she's such a Mary Sue. She's such a Mary Sue," and I was like, sort of like, I don't think she's a Mary Sue. We don't know enough about her yet. Yeah, maybe she knew how to fight Kylo Ren, but maybe they'll explain it somehow and it'll all make sense. I just think we need to give it time. It was just kind of like that thing. There's not enough evidence. There was not enough evidence to yet suggest that she was a Mary Sue because I mean they gave her sort of this mysterious kind of vibe on purpose in the Force Awakens, and I think that was intentional, and I actually think that it worked. But then she proved basically I was proved wrong by the people who were saying that she was a Mary Sue from the beginning, and they saw something I didn't, and so I admit, and then so now I completely admit. You know what? I admit with a heavy heart. Yeah, okay, yeah, she is a Mary Sue. But what's really funny is then you have all these because it seems like there's a lot of people, especially on Twitter, who they claim to be sequel fans, but it almost seems like it's for political reasons, and it's really cringe. And they say, "Oh yeah, Luke's more of a Mary Sue than Rey." It's like, okay,
It's
like
like,
the scene.
what?
It's like okay, you guys are lying if you say that. If you anybody who says Rey is a better character than someone like Luke Skywalker is lying. Like I don't think anybody actually thinks that. They might convince
It's
themselves that they are,
yeah.
but it's like
You have to really convince yourself of something like that, because if you were just to look at two pieces of fiction and compare Luke's arc versus Rey's, she
well,
didn't really
quote
have an
unquote, she
arc.
didn't have an arc.
Yeah, she didn't even have an arc. But if you look at Luke's arc compared to the we're just gonna dump everything on you, Rey. Here's all your abilities right out of the bat. Yeah, like I was in the camp that on day one that she was going to be a Mary Sue, just because like
Okay.
I knew that these movies were being made for political reasons, just because like Kathleen Kennedy like would literally be like, oh, the Force is female shirts and stuff
You
that
see,
she would wear.
I didn't like. You see, even the Last Jedi. I mean, in hindsight, I see like I think there definitely was sort of some underlying messages, but I don't think it was outright. It wasn't blatantly to the point, like blatantly politically correct in the same way that like something like Fembusters was, aka Ghostbusters 2016. I call it Fembusters, but Ghostbusters 2016 or that god awful looking Charlie's Angels movie that came out a
Oh
year ago,
god,
and it's like okay, yeah, there's the whole thing
those
of
are a bit more ham fisted,
yeah, and there's a
but
whole. I mean, like yeah, there was the whole thing with Poe being cucked by purple hair, by Holdo, and also Holdo sounds like a disease. It sounds like the name of a disease, by the way.
you
Holdo
have
disease.
Holdo syndrome, kid.
Yeah.
You have 10 days
Or
to
so,
live.
sir, I'd like to. I have some bad news. We've just examined. We've just done a scan of your entire body, and we're afraid you have a Holdo. Like it sounds gross too. Like I mean, if you just say it like that, but anyway. So yeah. Poe being like emasculated by Holdo, and then basically her being like the Karen, the female manager, the female who's just promoted to the manager is trying to prove herself
Yeah.
and is basically being yeah. And
Then Finn just simping for Ray.
no, Finn. Yes, I need to say everyone fucking simps for Ray, and it's like you're simping for
Why?
Ray, and then it's Finn, Kylo, even at Poe in some parts, like calling for Ray. It was like I know it
Hey,
wasn't really
at
simping.
least he called her out like in the last movie a few times.
Yeah. Oh,
At least.
Palpatine was simping for Ray. I mean, like he wanted to use her as a host body, like so. But I mean,
Yes,
then
I
again,
will
that was
be
his
a
grand.
woman now.
That was his granddaughter. But who else? Who else simped for Ray? It's got to be
Um.
like one more person who simped for Ray. Oh yeah, Princess Leia, because she didn't know, and I'm saying it for this reason. Princess Leia. So after Han Solo died and Ray came back, like they had met once, but Princess Leia hugged. I refuse to call her General Leia. Princess Leia hugged Ray like they like embraced her like they knew each other, and Chewie's just standing there. It's like, what are you
Yep.
doing? Like,
It's
aren't you gonna hug the best friend of your husband after he witnessed your husband die? And that's also another thing. What was the deal between Han Solo and Princess Leia? Like, were they divorced or something? Or what was the,
it.
why like what was
They. I think that this was a problem with the like. This is a analysis of like the entire prequel trilogy in general. It was the perpetual teenage rebellious state. It's like it's like how the boomers wanted to keep on being their rebels from the 60s. That's why I saw the um uh Leia and Han
basically what the
Solo.
boomers were? They were like far left in terms of like social stuff, and then they sort of kept those sensibilities, but sort of hit it with business suits. and then they decided, okay, let's move to the far right on economics. Then
Yeah, but it's just like the idea of like the counterculture never ending is what I saw in the like that's why they're still rebels. They're still the resistance. It's like that's why
oh, that's
Leia.
like that. That's like the most overused name. It seems
I
like if
know.
I ever see a movie or watch a TV show where like the underdog rebel force are called the Resistance, I am going to
Unless it's
resist.
about hit.
I am going to speed as fast as I can on the highway, and then I will resist arrest when the cops will try to.
Like not
Yeah.
even the French resistance. Like it may say that in the history books, but the French resistance, like there was multiple camps of it, and like the communist French resistance was called the Maquis. Like they didn't ever use like the Free French Resistance.
And then there were like the Gaul the Gaul the Dugal types, and then
The secret monarchists.
yeah, and then there were the more like libertarian, like classical Republican types, and the yeah. But either way,
Yeah.
yeah, no, you're right. But then
Yeah,
the
but
thing is
like
that
none of them use the term like resist rebel or resistance. It's like
yeah,
it's the most cringe.
and I understand like the whole thing the term like rebels and the rebellion that was like when it was used the um in the original trilogy. If you watch it again, you notice the nobody in the rebellion uses that term. I mean, you'll have like Luke Skywalker in A New Hope saying, "Oh, something about with the rebellion." But the thing is, they never refer to themselves as the rebellion. And I mean, they don't refer to themselves as this either. But the official name is the Alliance to Restore the Republic.
Yep.
But it's kind of like just how during the American Revolution, they still called they called like them the British called them like the colonial rebels, or they call them rebels. They called them just the colonists still, even after the United States had declared independent, even up to 1782, 1783, around the war's end, when the United States was recognized by a lot of the other countries, and England didn't recognize its sovereignty um, until 83, and then it's also similar in the old EU post um, Return of the I was about to say Return of the Sith, Return of the Jedi, even the Imperial Remnant, like the sort of fractured empire, still referred to the more like the New Republic, as they still called them the rebels. Like it's still they saw them as an illegitimate government. But in the original trilogy, the only people who call them the rebels are the Empire, which makes sense.
Yep.
But it's basically like they're calling themselves the rebels. And it's almost as if Princess Leia is like kind of going through kind of like a menopause or something. I don't know, just a midlife crisis or something like
The
that.
the midlife crisis of
And
a
she's like, I want to relive. I want to like recreate my early 20s.
yeah,
And so she's
it's
like,
just
look at this.
the
Yeah.
never getting out of your unresponsible young adult life. That's what they wanted to perpetuate, and that's why it's like I think that's why they like, oh yeah, Leia and Han are divorced now
Or were
because
they divorced? I
they
don't know.
wanted
It
to
just
live
said they
free.
just seemed to. I think they may have just been estranged, but
Whatever, they're apart. It's like now they're both off free living. It's like Leia's back at leading a group of well, honestly, misfit rebels. Like it's much like honestly the Bolsheviks, the
no. But the thing
resistance.
is, the resistance didn't even seem all that large. I mean, they had like what, like maybe 5 ships or so, and then if
Yeah,
you think about it, like then like pretty much all of them died in the Last Jedi. If you
it's
remember, like basically, so many of them died that when they were escaping Crate, the salt planet, um, all of the resistance could fit onto the Millennium Falcon.
yeah. Okay. What's Evan saying? But
Uh,
yeah, back to
you're
your
saying
point.
so politicrat. You're saying all righteous resistance had some unseemly elements before long, you'll be telling us that democracy elected Hitler in the French Revolution was bad.
Hey, I'll tell you right now, the French Revolution was monstrously evil.
I think it was just incompetent, and it was.
I just refer to the French revolutionaries as evil.
Okay, yeah. The only thing, okay, I will say that and you're definitely going to disagree with me like this because you're like a throne and altar type guy. Yeah. So you're like a throne and altar kind of guy. I'm just like I'm all for a little aristocracy, but I'm definitely not a monarchist. So, I think the good thing about the French Revolution was that it basically scared a lot of the other European nations into sort of reforming and creating sort of a more republican system. And in a lot of ways, that would have that kind of prevented.
Well, not really republican system, just a I'd honestly say a more nationalist model instead of just the pure monarchy, is like a monarcho-nationalism.
Yeah, instead of the dynastic state, it became a nation state.
Because like under the old state, it's like, oh yeah, the Habsburgs could rule the Dutch, the Spanish, and the Austrians.
Yeah, it was confusing. And then like the Spanish Empire was ruled by the Habsburg. Yeah.
But yeah, that's because like monarchy wasn't isolated just to one culture. It's like, no, we were ruling in the name of God, and like this is his entire realm. So it didn't really matter.
Yeah, I will say that the one good thing, though, and somebody actually just commented that, the one good thing that did come out of the French Revolution was Napoleon, because I have mixed feelings on Napoleon, but
I actually like his nephew Napoleon III more than I like the first.
Well, that's because Napoleon III was more of a reactionary monarchist, whereas Napoleon was like what's funny is Napoleon was basically like a strange combination between like a centrist, a populist, and a classical liberal.
But then he was also a monarch. He was a
no. But the thing is, that wasn't basically. So he crowned himself emperor in much the same way as how the Roman emperors were crowned emperor.
Well, yeah,
because remember, emperor originally emperor had no royal connotation whatsoever.
Well, as soon as the France fell to the Republic, there was a famous saying in all of history that's when the Western Romans truly fell, because the last vestiges of like that old idea of Rome was France up until that point when it was still a kingdom.
I guess I think that's a bit of a stretch. But
that's what the common perception at the time was. Like, it was the last vestiges of this idea of Rome in the West was
basically
France.
Like the chaos, though, of the French Revolution made way for Napoleon, and eventually Napoleon himself completely I thought it was hilarious how he managed to do this. He completely delegitimized the divine right of kings. The fact that he rose up and he was like, okay, I can claim legitimacy.
Through that, he was a romantic monarchist. That's like the title that you described him as, because he, a romantic monarchist was the idea of like the monarch that's from the people. It was like, it's
Bonapartism.
Well, yeah, it's also referred to as romanticism, romantic monarchy.
I've never heard that term before, but interesting.
Yeah, it's there's several.
Oh, let's talk about this after the stream. Let's get back on.
Yeah. I swear I'm not a monarchist. So.
No, Evan's not a monarchist. He's and I mean this in the best way, Evan. But he's a boomercon. His politics are what I call boomercon politics.
Yuck.
Okay.
So essentially the resistance are the old boomers still trying to be edgy young rebels.
But it seems like they're recruiting a bunch of young people who were either their parents. It seems like they're recruiting people. Like, okay, it seems like it has a bunch of old people from it has Leia, of course, Holdo, who is apparently an imperial officer who defected to the rebellion or something. I think that's her backstory. And then you had Akbar, of course.
Yep, you had all the old gang there, and then you had essentially.
And then you had that random other old lady, the one who did the lesbian kiss at the end
Yeah,
Yeah,
the one, the
but yeah,
medic
I don't
woman.
even know. No one even knows who she is. But I assume she was probably with the rebellion.
Yeah, it's like I'm surprised they didn't just throw like a token white-haired woman and said, "Oh, she's Winter" in the background.
That would have been. That I would have liked that. That would have been at least a nice touch. But it's like no, they don't even want to give. And I understand like wanting to limit fan service, but there are ways to do it without making it seem pandery. Like
What?
they could have somehow incorporated this. Like
Like
even if
instead
they
of sending random Indian descended woman to the Republic world, why not send like Winter there?
yeah, that would make sense. Or even just it's like just name Kylo Ren, Jason Solo. It's not
Yeah,
hard. Just change the name. It's like it could be literally the same character. Make a Jason Solo. You don't even necessarily have to call him Darth Catus, but
but then it's like also the name Ben Solo. It's like
it's
that there's a Ben Skywalker that was Luke
but
Skywalker's son.
yeah, it doesn't make sense that he would be named after Obi-Wan Kenobi because the thing is Han Solo never really had a connection with Obi-Wan Kenobi. He just thought he was some weird old man, which he
He's
kind of
this
was. Obi-Wan
he's this
Kenobi
old
was.
he was this old wizard from the clan. All he knew.
Oh no, not the. Oh, I the Grand Wizard. No,
Obi-Wan
no,
was the grand wizard.
no. But he was. Yeah, no. But he was this old hermit. Lived there, and then Han Solo thought it was weird. It was just a job he was doing. And Han Solo what knew him for like what, like maybe 4 hours,
A
4 hours
day.
maybe,
Well,
4 hours tops.
okay, hyperspace travel, so maybe like a couple days at most.
Yeah, it's like, but would that really leave? And I understand, like, I mean, Han would have felt bad for Luke. It's like because Obi-Wan was his mentor, and I assume that maybe I don't even know how long Obi or Luke and Obi-Wan. I'd say a couple weeks, maybe. I don't know, maybe two weeks.
If you really stretch it out, possibly a couple weeks, but that's like really stretching the timeline of the film.
That is true. And then, oh yeah, but then also I've always assumed though too that Luke had met him a couple times before because they're basically neighbors. He's basically the crazy neighbor
Hey, there's old man Obi-Wan.
because I mean he recognized him.
Well, yeah, it's like in Legends continuity, there were comics of younger child Luke meeting Obi-Wan. In fact,
No, we
Uncle
wanted to
Owen.
save him from Tusken Raiders or something.
Yeah, that, and also Uncle Owen having to shoot Darth Maul in the head.
Oh yeah,
Well,
no, but what's interesting though is they for canon they did bring back the Darth Maul returning to Tatooine. However,
I like that.
unfortunately, they did it in Rebels. Whereas I feel like the best time to do it would have been to wait till like the Obi-Wan show, live action, because yeah.
Yeah,
But either way,
but
okay. So back to let's finish talking about Ray, and then let's move on to our problem, how we would fix the films, and what the best ways to fix the films would be.
well, I think we already did most of what we could do with Rey. Besides, like her backstory just kind of was like everywhere, but yet nowhere. Like
Well, she's no one, remember?
yeah, she's no one. It's like in the first film, it's like, oh, she's seeing flashbacks of like a shuttle leaving, and then it's like in the second film, Kyle's like, oh no, they were just some addicts to
I thought that was
spice.
funny. I actually thought that was funny. They're no one. No, and he just says like, yeah, no, they're no one. I actually thought
They're drug
I
addicts.
actually liked that. I actually liked that. It's like okay, she's. I mean, I'd always liked the idea of her being a Kenobi. I was firmly on uh, the Ray Kenobi team, but either way,
I,
but then again, I was actually kind of like, okay, I get because the whole oh, this person is the daughter or the offspring, the secret daughter of so and so. It's like it's contrived. It's used too much in sort of like normie, like epic film franchise films, and so I was kind of glad. But then it turns out she's Palpatine's granddaughter. I'm like, okay, that's not as bad as some other options they could have gone for.
I honestly
But
wish that she was Jaina Solo, and you know how they can
well,
the
actually, okay,
Force.
so we'll get there. We'll get there. Let's get there in a second because then
Oh
that will
yeah,
be into how we would fix these movies. Um, I would have. So never mind the sing. Maybe
She should have been Windu's daughter.
I was about to say, what if they made her Lando's daughter?
Oh God. Well, she's whiter than all hell, so I don't know how you'd explain that.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like it would also have been nicer to bring in Billy D. Williams earlier, like not maybe at least for the first or the second, because I feel like the only reason they brought him, it was kind of like a last ditch attempt. It's like, oh crap,
Quick, we're sinking ship. Let's
we're
try
sinking ship.
to.
We need somebody. We need somebody else.
We need a pump to pump out the water. Let's use this guy.
Yeah, and he was one of the best. Honestly, I think he probably was one of the, or definitely hands down one of the better parts about no, Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah. Well, that's just because he's Lando. So
yeah, and Lando's a cool character.
Yeah, he's the cool ANCAP, the one cool ANCAP.
He's like the he's like the ANCAP. Yeah, he's like, hey there, Han. That's how he says. He calls him Han. But
Yep.
I also liked Donald Glover's performance in Solo. I thought that was fantastic. But
okay.
Either way,
so let's start critiquing and fixing these
things. Okay,
catastrophes.
So the rules with this, the rules of how these thought experiments or whatever, is that they have to more or less resemble the same. That you can't like completely write a different movie. It has to have generally the same plot, not necessarily strong in devices, but in such a way where, but you can change like the roles of the characters or the characters' names or what happens or whatever. But actually, no, not even. You can't even change the characters' names. I'm not going to allow that. Or actually, I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit. That's just,
how about we well, when we're referring to these characters, like we'll put out what we would change their names to if we want to actually change them. So first off, let's just start with the opening scene of The Force Awakens. So the raid on the town. I actually love that piece of cinematography.
That was a good, yeah. I thought it was a good opening. I did think it was a solid opening.
I liked it, but then also like it's going off in my head. It's like if these shuttles are already launched, like these troop transports, and the lights are just flickering, did they not do their PMCS right? That's preventive maintenance checks and services. So like where the light's just not working, and then they like kick the switch, and then lights are on. So I don't know. I would have I don't know. I just have the lights on, but like make it dimmed, so that way you could still kind of like that mysterious motif of like the stormtroopers and stuff, and like instead of just the flickering lights, because that's just so stupid.
It was just trying to make it look ominous.
Yeah, like I do a more dimmed light and the more darker aspect instead of just the like bright lights that are just flickering.
Okay.
So that would be one thing I would change. A minor change. And the actual like battle of the town, relatively speaking, I think that was actually pretty solid. I would also I'd also go back to older blaster looking effects from like the prequel trilogy, because it just seemed too much like J.J. Abrams' Star Trek.
I actually liked J.J. Abrams' Star Trek, believe it or not.
But also, I think it just didn't fit with Star Wars because you already knew like what good CGI blasters looked like.
We're actually going to take now that we bring up J.J. Abrams' Star Trek. Honestly, I think it had one of the most epic trailers. It's like a 2-minute trailer. We're gonna take a little break and I'm gonna play it because it's pretty based.
The 2009 Star Trek?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was actually pretty cool.
Hold on. It was the
too many lens flares.
So yeah, like I mean, this makes it. This was a pretty solid trailer. I actually did like this one.
I couldn't believe it when the bartender told me who you are.
Why are you talking to me, man?
Your father was captain of a starship for 12 minutes. He saved 800 lives, including yours. I dare you to do better. Enlist Instafleet.
You will experience fear. Fear in the face of certain death. Pull your chute! We received a distress call.
I've been waiting for this day my whole life. This day of reckoning.
We've got no captain and no first officer to replace.
Yeah, we do.
You are capable of deciding your own destiny. The question is, which path will you choose?
James T. Kirk was a great man, but that was another life.
They're locking torpedo. Emergency evasive! Fire everything!
See, like that's a pretty solid trailer. I mean,
Yeah, it was, and it's like that's the good example of what J.J. Abrams can do. But
yeah. No, the thing is, he's really only like I've noticed he's good at doing, like, for instance, the two things that he's really only good at are, and this isn't like supposed to be an insult to J.J. Abrams, but this isn't supposed to be an insult to J.J. Abrams or anything. I think he's made some fine films, or at least entertaining films. Like, I don't think he's he's definitely nowhere near the greatest director, but I'd say he's like middle. There are many directors that are worse than him, but he's good at two things. The first thing is he's good at making sort of speculative, kind of like weird, not independent film, but like just sort of like speculative concept films. Like, remember that one? There was that one where the
found footage film,
about with the monsters or something.
Yeah. What's the fuck?
Was it like Groverfield?
Yeah, something along that.
Something like that. Yeah, and so like things like that. But then he's also good at like, at least from a technical perspective, or at least he's good at rebooting films. He's really good at but it's also because it's kind of manipulative too. He knows how to manipulate the audience by bringing in enough nostalgia, like the nostalgia factor. And
yeah, that's because it's a fanboy making the film. So a fanboy is going to know what touches the nostalgia heartstrings.
I mean, I'm a fanboy too, but I'd make the film a little more complicated than that. But either way, or more complex, but still.
Well, it's the difference between, like, I think, God, I've forgotten where I watched a video about this, but it was like the difference between a fanboy making a film and a truly independent artist that is doing the work. Like, say it's in the same universe that they're going to be producing the same film. Like, a fanboy will bring in all those nostalgia stuff and try to tug at the heartstrings. Well, then you're going to see, which was essentially the Force Awakens, while then you get the independent writers that are writing within this universe, but weren't necessarily fanboys, which that was the situation with KOTOR 2. And you can see they're not tugging on nostalgia when they were making KOTOR 2. They were making their own independent story within the universe itself.
And what's interesting about that story, it could have taken place in like another sci-fi. You could have taken that story. Yeah.
It could have taken place anywhere. Could
It
take
could be.
place in our world.
It could have been set in like Mass Effect or something.
It could have also been set just. It could have been set in Victorian era Europe. It could have been set in
Like after the 30 Years War or something. Like
yeah,
that 30 Years War being the Jedi Civil War. Yeah,
it could have been
that's
set
basically
after
what
the
it
30
was.
Years
That's basically
War.
what it was. The schismatic Jedi, aka Protestants versus Roman Catholics. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I guess what would Cromwell? Who would Cromwell be? Would he be Darth? No, not Darth Nihilus. Darth Scion.
He'd be Darth Scion. He'd be Darth Scion.
Yeah, I mean, he was angry and mad. Like Cromwell was a very bitter man.
Although he was an overarching force of England, though, so he could be.
Yeah,
a Darth
remember
Nihilus.
he was a European Mohammed.
Yep. Oh God.
Well, actually, no. I'd say Mohammed is like half Martin Luther, half Oliver Cromwell. But either way, we're getting off topic. We need to have a stream about that sometime. I love having streams talk about history and stuff. But so yeah, but with J.J. Abrams, so yeah, he's really good at the reboot thing. But then he's not a great storyteller though. That's the thing.
Yeah. Which is really the weakness of his films. Like I'd probably say that the third Star Trek in the reboot series was
weird.
It was weird, and just the storytelling was just not there.
It just took place on this one planet, and the Enterprise was destroyed, and
yeah,
I know it just didn't seem like I don't know. It just didn't seem like the stakes were all that high. I did like that one scene though. It was with he had Scotty, and so basically they were like blasting the Beastie Boys when they were flying through space, and then Scotty was like, "Is that classical music?"
I mean, yeah, that would be funny, like how they actually interpret our music today.
Oh no, I do think that so John Williams' music in a couple hundred years, he's going to be seen as like the leading kind of like basically the Star Wars music. Even if the movies, like let's say nobody watches the movies in the far future because like that's an outmoded thing or just whatever, they're lost or something. The score for Star Wars is still going to be. I think the score is going to outlive the movies even, because just on its own, like you could literally make a symphony out of the. John Williams could make a symphony of the Star Wars music.
I think the neoclassical genre in general that like John Williams played into will live on as a truly artistic age of music within our time, because like it's not about sex or drugs or money and stuff. It's about actual like art, like artistry.
It's going to
survive longer than rap. That's what I'm essentially saying.
Yeah, and so I've never been a big fan of rap, but but there are some elements I can respect it, so, like from a just an objective standpoint, at least in terms of like its historical significance and in the cultural sense. But I'm really only talking about stuff like 80s and 90s.
Jordan Peterson, like, sorry to bring up this fuck again, but he made a good.
No, you can't listen to rap. It's going to rot your brain, bucko.
He actually made a good point about like all the classical symphonies that we still play today is only 5% of of the 5 composers that we actually still remember from that age, out of the like hundreds that were back then. And these other hundreds of composers aren't even remembered. Their pieces aren't played. And
because I'm sure a lot of them were probably really good.
Oh yeah, I bet. And then like even the composers that are remembered today, like Mozart and Bach and stuff, only 5% of their symphonies are even played.
Yeah. Oh, fun. You know what's really funny? So, for the last the last episode of the Political Pigpen I did, or no, it was 2 episodes ago, I got copyright struck. And for playing the Allegro from Beethoven's 40th, or from Mozart's 40th Symphony. And so I basically said, I demanded that, I said, there must be a mistake. And then I said, if it's not, I demand to be put into contact with the late Mr. Mozart's estate so we can, and I wrote it like very formally. and it's like, so obviously, it's fucking true. But either way, so Star Wars again,
But yeah, John Williams scores and like all this neoclassical music that you're seeing like on YouTube and stuff of like all these more symphony style music that's being made in the modern age. I think that will survive. But
I think so too, and I think that like there's just something very. So I got about a year over like COVID. So this was like around a year ago. I really got back. I finally got back into classical music after many years, and I discovered. I truly discovered Wagner and Tchaikovsky, and those are clearly Williams's biggest influences. And like you could just hear like there are so many like motifs within the 1812 overture that are used with that bear resemblance to the original trilogy. Like the 1812 overture, like dun 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 dun.
oh yeah.
Yeah. And then it's also basically it's like a song about Russian nationalism. It's basically about how the Russians beat back the French. And, I don't know. There should have been. I'm surprised I'm surprised they some Soviet didn't come along and do like a 1943 overture or something.
I honestly hope that they don't get those two mixed up in the far future.
They might, but either way. But I swear, if Wagner and Tchaikovsky were alive today, they'd be scoring movies, hands down. There's no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm. But it's just the same old plague of like there's going to be all this music composed within our age, and only about 5% of it of the 5 artists that are actually going to be remembered, which I believe that now I'm drawing a blank on the name.
John Williams, Lil Pump.
Yeah, John Williams.
No, Lil Pump. Let's see, Rebecca Black. No.
I think we should really get back to Star Wars.
Yeah. Okay.
This was an interesting conversation. It will be a weird side note in this.
Yeah.
But so like back to the opening scene, like I thought that was all good. I honestly liked like how I actually like saw some like basic, like it was very clunky, but it was still basic squad maneuvers. It was like these guys were straight out basic training and told to clear town.
Well, they basically were, because if you think about it, so these guys were all recruits, or they were like kidnapped as kids and stuff like that. And only 20 years have passed.
If it's a Sparta,
they're like probably all like late teens, early 20s. Like
if it's
Finn's probably like what 20.
Though,
Finn's like probably what, like 22 or something.
Yeah, but if it's a Sparta-like society, like at 18, they should be fully competent soldiers.
True, but then also you have to think about.
I don't give them that excuse. I just don't. Like if they were picked off of the street at 18, like they just graduated high school and they ended up joining the Stormtrooper Corps, and they just got out of their basic training, and next thing you know they're clearing a town. It's like, okay, I could believe that, and why they were stumbling around and kind of like still awkward with actually doing this stuff, because like you're not taught how to be a professional soldier in basic training. I'm like, that teaches you the basics and enough to get by, and you'll still fuck up a lot. So,
yeah.
Like you truly don't know like what you're doing until you're like in your 30 or in the military. Like it's a creep process.
Is it? I thought this was a Star Wars stream, not a U.S. military.
not a U.S. military critique. But no. It's like that. Like I could understand like if they were fresh out of basic training, that all these stormtroopers would be incompetent and kind of still bumbling around. Like they have the idea of how to clear a town, but this is the first time they're actually incorporating that training into actual results. But they're not that. And the fact that they're taking prisoners and all that stuff, like that's actually what you'll see amongst civilian militias is like oftentimes they will not take prisoners, and they will oftentimes execute people that try to.
Oh yeah, no, but also another Star. I'm gonna use a Star Wars example of this, but Cham Syndulla, Ryloth.
Oh yeah,
that's why the like Masamita, no, not Masamita, but Orn Frita, the fat ass corrupt Twi'lek, didn't like him.
Well, it's like it was understandable because they were essentially the Twi'lek Caliban.
Yeah, no, they were. That's literally what they were.
So it's like, yeah, all these I like that. But everything went right. And then when Kylo landed, with a stormtrooper escort, that would be kind of awkward in all reality if you were one of those stormtroopers, because like one, he doesn't have a military rank necessarily. How do you address him?
I mean, it's the same as Darth Vader. He's like a extra military, like
He's the
he's
the
like the
Emperor's
enforcer. So
executioner.
he has a position where he's not like in command, but he needs an honor guard because he's important. Kind of
Yeah, he has a air about him that gives him within the government he has a position of authority. But
the dynamic between him and Hux, it's almost like the dynamic between Vader and Tarkin, but at the same time, Vader and Tarkin, to quote the ancient Greeks, they both know themselves, like, know thyself. They both, but whereas there's sort of this Kylo Ren and General Hux, they sort of have it's just they're young. They're like what, maybe early 30s, late 20s, and they have like this sort of they're basically they're like brothers trying to gain mommy and daddy's approval, but at the same time they don't really work together in the same or respect each other in the same way that Vader and Tarkin did, because Vader understood that when he was doing the Emperor's bidding on the Death Star or out in the Outer Rim territories or whatever, he understood that Tarkin was in charge, and he begrudgingly accepted that. And again, he really they both respected each other.
Well, it was the respect amongst men too that was a key thing.
True. And then I'd actually argue. Well, I think because Darth Vader is like the main villain in Episode 5 and Episode 6, a lot of people automatically just like assume, oh yeah, he's the main villain in A New Hope. But if you just look at it from a storytelling perspective and as a film, and you look at like sort of the archetypes, the main villain is actually Tarkin.
Yeah, that is definitely true. But going back to this, I would with Hux, I would also demote him. Like, he would be a colonel at most. At most, he would be a colonel.
So then why would he be, in that case, how would he, what role would he play that's even significant then if he...
Well, one, I would get rid of this whole triumvirate thing of like Kylo Ren, him, and Phasma, because that just doesn't make sense. Like, maybe within their own little chain of command, maybe.
Or maybe make them a subgroup, the three of them are...
Yeah, it's like they operate as a task force at most. Okay. And I would have the stormtroopers be part of the Imperial Army, or whichever, like, First Order Army. Hux is the brigade commander, and he is the military attached to Kylo Ren's, like, little task force. And then Captain Phasma is like there's only a company of stormtroopers, so roughly like 200 stormtroopers of elite shock infantry. And she is the company commander of them, and that's why I kind of have them as being like the unofficial triumvirate. That's how I would make it work.
Okay.
But beyond that, like, I cannot really... That's like trying to make it logical, that whole triumvirate thing, within a small little chain of command. And then, of course, there's the other chains of command in the other parts of the First Order.
So in that case, would Kylo still be Snoke's apprentice, or would it be like maybe there's a different Knight of Ren within each task force, and he's just one of the Knights of Ren?
I would say like, one, I'd also make Knights of Ren all Force users.
Yeah, because they were stupid. That's what I was anticipating. I thought it was going to be like a dark side order, similar to like the similar to like the Sith, or no, similar to like the Imperial Knights in the Fel Empire. Yeah. That's what I was kind of anticipating them to be. Yet they have like axes and they look like they're out of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it's like you wanted fantasy. Like, Star Wars admittedly is science fantasy, but it's like...
Well, I wouldn't even say science fantasy. I just say fantasy set in space. It's closer to Lord of the Rings than it is to Star Trek.
Yeah.
I personally don't like the term science fantasy.
Whatever. So yeah, Knights of Ren, like I would have them be, as you said, like a dark side, force order, that's directly under the tutelage of. I'm just gonna rename Snoke to Darth Plagueis at this point because I hate the name
Dude,
Snoke.
you spoiled it. You spoiled it. Damn it.
But I would say that Kylo Ren is like the most favored. And he's like the equivalent of a, I don't know, like Sith Lord amongst the Knights Ren. Where he's not the top dog, but he's of significant rank within the order that he has his own task force. And I also have the Knights of Ren be like more integrated, like how the Sith and the Sith Empire would like have their own little pockets of like military assets that they could directly command. And that's why I would have like Colonel Husk in this case and Captain Phasma being like part of this unofficial triumvirate in Kylo Ren's like little task force fleet.
Okay. Anything else specifically, or those are the main things?
That's the main things pertaining to it, at least the opening like criteria of it.
So let's not go like blow by blow through like scene by scene by scene, but just like pick some major aspect, the ones you had the biggest problems with in The Force Awakens.
I also I completely axe the idea of having super weapons, but that's like is that too major of a plot deviance?
No, I wouldn't say so. As long as there's something.
Okay, well, I would, instead of Starkiller Base being a giant planet killing super weapon, I'd have it being the forward operating base for the invasion of the New Republic instead.
Interesting.
Yeah. I would have it being the forward operating base where.
But on Ilum, or would you put it somewhere else?
I would have it.
Ilum doesn't really make sense if it's forward op because Ilum is just way out there.
Yeah, I would it'd be something skirting the unknown regions, but I'd probably make it some sort of
the moon of Pantora or something, that snow planet from the
I wouldn't make it a snow planet. One, you're gonna have to bring in like I would get a biosphere similar to Earth where they could do multi-terrain training for the invasions with the.
Or what about that? Have you played Jedi Knight 2?
A little bit.
Okay, because that first planet that you're on, that like rocky outpost, it's like that rock or that like that just with the canyons and stuff. Is it like Jibin and something like that? But something like that would be interesting too, like sort of like a dark, kind of like rocky, kind of like Malachor geography. But of course not.
The thing you need in like I would also have like a forward operating / training base where the units that would be in the first waves would be receiving the most amount of multi-terrain training for wherever they're being deployed. So that's why I would have like on an Earth-like planet where you'd have all those different terrain features that they'd be receiving training in. Like you'd have your
Endor would be interesting, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, potentially. But either way, just a forward operating base. And Kylo Ren is kind of based out of there because he's kind of going into the known galaxy, so he has to go through this forward operating base. And I would have the Resistance, the Resistance would be much more like an actual Blackwater group, a more mercenary organization, and they would not have the name Resistance. They would have something actually realistic. I could actually still leave Leia in charge of it as like the figurehead leader, like the CEO. She's the CEO of Blackwater.
Eric Prince. Yeah. Oh no, something interesting to do would also be to emphasize on it that she's basically kind of maybe disgraced in a sense, and like that's why she's like no longer in government or anything, because there was the book Bloodlines, which was actually pretty enjoyable, but it had a lot of like it's the closest thing that you had to that we had to sort of setting the stage of the political situation of the thing. But it was the one where basically there was
the populist and the centrists.
Yeah, basically it was basically the federal. They should have called them like federalists and like libertarians or something. I don't know. But that because that's basically what it was. But there was the but in it, Princess Leia got ousted as Vader's daughter, and she was forced to resign. So it'd be interesting if like there was a bit of an allusion to that, and there was
if we still wanted to go with that, like for me personally, I would go more down the old way of where she kind of got out of politics when she started to have her children, and then as her children, like one also Kylo Ren is renamed to Jason Solo, as of now, and his Sith name is Kaitis, but
I'd say a good thing. Still call him Kylo Ren, but then he denounces the Kylo Ren title. Maybe at like the end of the Rise of Skywalker when he takes over the First Order. I don't know.
He's Darth Kaitis now. Whichever way that happens, but yeah, he's now Jason Solo, and also I'd make Rey also Jaina Solo.
Do they know their siblings?
The twins.
Do they know their siblings though?
There are Force techniques in Star Wars that were previously established that could wipe memories. So
you'd have to cast an older actress though for Rey, or a younger actor though for Kylo. Because
I'd go with younger on Kylo.
Okay, because I know like Kylo Ren was supposed to be like 31 and Rey was supposed to be like 19.
Yeah, no, I just go for younger on that one. But as the children get estranged and Jason falls to the dark side, I'd probably have his fall a little bit earlier, or he gets abducted by the Knights of Ren instead of him turning on Luke. And him just kind of being forced into the dark side.
Or maybe like he was kidnapped as a kid, maybe? I don't know.
Well, I would say probably the Knights of Ren would have kidnapped Kylo when he was younger and maybe tried to kidnap Jaina, but then just because of the Sith hunting down Leia and Han, I'd have them more go into hiding, but then give their. So I assume then
you'd basically more or less start the film then. So the Jakku thing would still be there with Poe and the ships and everything. However, Rey would not be there, or Jaina would not be there, and then the film would pretty much then start with like the hauler maybe, and then the guys who are coming for Han Solo. Like it was like him and his daughter kind of just like working.
Yeah, I could. That would be probably a good way to do that. With Poe and Finn, like I would not separate Poe and Finn in this. Also,
they should have an adventure together.
Yeah, they're venturing over Jakku together. But also Finn, I'd actually also have the stormtroopers actually have real names, so he'd have a real name instead of Finn, and he would be the chew spitting infantry. He'd be the chew spitting infantryman that is kind of going along with it because he needs something. He's like that man that if he doesn't have something to do, he'll die mentality, instead of the kind of like doesn't care mentality that he kind of adopted out of the blue. And
basically
I'd have him
running to try to basically
I'd also have him be a little bit older. Like that wasn't his first battle, that wasn't his first tour.
He's like, how old was Finn supposed to be? Probably like what, early 20s?
Yeah, early 20s, I think. And it's like they said it was his first battle. It's like I'm calling bull.
He didn't even shoot. Yeah,
I'd say it'd probably be I'd make him a little bit older, probably like in his early 30s, and it's not his first tour of combat, so
And
He's
keep him black, but cast the guy from Cory in the House.
Yeah, that could work. Poe, I'd also have him be probably a former New Republic.
Here's an idea. Make him Jagged Fell.
Oh yeah, that would work.
This wasn't Jagged Fell. Wasn't he Wedge's nephew?
Yeah, my memory serves me right. That
Okay.
sounds right. But yeah, you can make him Jagged Fell, which would Fell Empire get thrown into there. But yeah, so they escape the planet with the apparently Luke is in hiding or something. I would also probably change that to Luke has taken the Jedi Order to train, so that way he can be in peace. That way they can be in peace and train to fight the resurgent Sith or Knights of Ren on a distant world. And they're trying to find him because they believe that they need him now and he's not ready yet. So I'd also change that. Like he's not given up in this timeline, because that's just not Luke Skywalker's character.
Yeah, I came here to die. Leave me alone.
I'm a scrumpy old man. It's like, no, he'd be the guy. He'd be Grandmaster Luke from Legends. He'd be the one training up a new generation of Jedi to fight the resurgent Sith. So yeah, none of this "I'm here to die" mentality from him. So they're attempting to find him, but he left.
Maybe make him on Tython instead. I don't know. Or
yeah, Tython. Tython sounds best. Just because we're not doing this. Yeah, we're not doing that unknown regions BS.
Okay. So they actually retconned that. So that is no longer the. So they used to call it like, it was the first Jedi Temple, that one. But so they retconned it. And I think it may have been in The Mandalorian, or it may have been like a book that sort of like referenced Tython. But it was basically like that's just one of the planets that they believed was like it was a candidate for having the first Jedi Temple, but that turned out the real one that the Order was founded on Tython.
Well, at least they did that, but it's like the Jedi weren't like they did have early temples kind of everywhere that they could. That there was like a Force nexus on, they would put a Jedi temple on. So,
and
like,
and then even later on, when they would destroy Sith temples and then build a temple of their own on top to contain the energy,
like Coruscant,
that's the main example.
Yeah, that's the best example. So yeah, and then I would have Blackwater in this galaxy, commanded by CEO Leia. Directed from the New Republic. Also, the New Republic will not be destroyed in one battle. That's just stupid. The New Republic can't officially declare war because like they're the Republic. So I'm gonna guess it's like, they need Parliament to declare war or something, and that ain't gonna happen. So the executive branch of the Republic will be like, hey, to Blackwater, can you assault?
So they actually live by the Constitution. They actually, I respect them. They actually, only Congress can declare war. So like the executive branch can't issue a special military action.
Well, they can embezzle funds. They can send funds into a third party actor, aka Blackwater, in this galaxy.
Uh-huh.
So they send Blackwater. And they've been kind of doing these ops against like all the Imperial remnants, I'd say, instead of just the First Order. But they want to destabilize the First Order's potent military buildup along their border with the New Republic. So they're going to attack this forward operations base. And Kylo Ren, let's just say he's still in the hunt for BB-8, and they successfully. Instead of the gang members boarding the freighter, it will be good old Stosh Troopin.
That was kind of a dumb scene, honestly.
Yeah, that was really dumb. It had no relevance to the overall plot. So, like, the main thing about writing is if it has nothing to do with the overall plot, do not include it. It's also Chekhov's gun.
Only Tolkien can do that.
Yeah, only
Tom
Tolkien.
Bombadil.
Yeah, he has the right to because he's Tolkien.
Plus, Tom Bombadil was based.
Yeah, he was. So but Tolkien gets a pass where other authors don't because other authors have not earned the respect as Tolkien. So yeah, screw you, other
So
writers.
wrap up this one so I can go because we still have 2 more movies after that.
So yeah, Blackwater attacks this Fort Operation Bates, absolutely devastates it, and without an official declaration of war, the First Order views this as a terrorist attack upon their military by a third-party actor working for an illegitimate government. So I'd honestly say that the First Order would actually be justified in declaring war. Like after that, they declare war on the New Republic, which they were gonna anyway. But this kind of just gave them legitimate justification, which will also kind of morally gray the lines of who was right.
Oh,
So,
does Hux give a speech?
I'd say that like there would actually be like a dedicated ground campaign on whichever planet this is, the replacement for Starkiller Base, and he actually does take a leading role as their brigade commander in the front, and like they're on a retreat or something. Like maybe he'll give like a small speech, but it's not to a Roman saluting. I'm not going to use demonetization language here, but Roman saluting crowd of soldiers. It's going to be a mixed force of like regular army and stormtroopers to like we have to fight on. This is for our nation and our people. We must stand fast against these terrorists that wish to bring down our society or something. I do something like that. Something far more like genuinely realistic from a military commander perspective.
Fair enough.
And not make him this cartoonish stand-in for white supremacists that they try to do.
So for me, I wouldn't change as much as you. But yeah, I wouldn't change as much as you, but there would be some significant ones. The things that I would agree with you on, I would keep Rey, but also spell her name Rae instead of Rey because because it seems more feminine if it's Rae. So yeah, so basically we can keep her on Jakku, the desert planet, or we can just make it back to Tatooine. I don't know, but Jakku, Tatooine, it doesn't matter. So keep all that, and then have the whole thing with Finn and Poe. However, maybe. So yeah, they do the crash landing, but like he doesn't lose. But like Poe and Finn kind of travel together, and maybe they end up meeting Rey, and Rey's not a pilot, but Poe's a pilot. So Poe's the one who does like all the flying of the Millennium Falcon when they get into that shenanigans. Because they're looking for the BB-8 droid, but who already found Rey, and then so Poe's reunited early with BB-8. And then you have the new gang. You have the gang like immediately within like I don't know 20 minutes. They just all happen to randomly meet each other, and then they're in and so then they go, and then the whole thing with Han Solo happens. But yeah, instead of the pirates or whatever, it's stormtroopers. It's like a stormtrooper shouting or scouting thing. So that happens. They escape in the Millennium Falcon. But yeah, and then as for the First Order, I'd leave it more or less the same, but I would make it as less of a giant military focused on militarization. Like, yeah, they have a military, but like It's not like some huge like empire type thing. They're like the size of like a moderate. They're like a moderately sized imperial remnant. They have some older ship. They use like mostly old ships, but then they have like a several like newer models that maybe they managed to. Because I also like the idea of the First Order having like proxy kind of factions that they sort of control, like ideological factions within the Republic, within Republic space. So think of like kind of like in Nazi Germany, or no, in the United States, there were like businessmen who supported Nazi Germany and sort of like paid lip service to them.
Oh,
And then you
so
also
Walt
have
Disney?
Walt Disney. I don't know if it was no Henry Ford.
I'm joking.
Yeah. Henry Ford, I think, was one, and then Charles Lindbergh. But yeah, you had these like movements that were sympathetic towards them, and were like, "Hey, we should like follow their example. We should maybe bring them into the Republic." Just stuff like that. But it's really just Yuri Bezmenov stuff that the First Order is doing. And but yeah, so and then it's the same structure, but then Snoke maybe they should call him. I don't know what they should call him, but they should call him. I don't know, like Lord. I don't know, like Lord bad guy. I don't know. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. Let's just his name doesn't matter. But yeah. So we do that. There's that, and then so plot more or less goes on the same. Yeah, they meet Han Solo, but then after that, Poe briefly departs and gets on his goes to his X-wing, or his X-wing returns. I don't know. Somehow he manages to get a ship, and he summons the new Republic to come help, because there's that squadron battle over Takodana, the castle thing. Also, Maz Kanata does not have Luke Skywalker's lightsaber.
Yeah, no.
No, the thing is, Luke's lightsaber is gone. We're never going to see it again in the franchise. It's got lost to Cloud City.
And if I might add something, I would have the Kylo Ren and Jaina Solo in this case actually duel, but I'd have it like a very like heartfelt duel. It will be brother and sister literally going at each other and it would be like the first duel between Jaina Solo and Darth Kaitis, where actually like Jaina would still kind of win and cut off Darth Kaitis's, I believe it was his knee. I'm right. But yeah, either way, like she would still win, unironically in mine.
Yeah, so yeah, do that. And so they're at the Takodana, but then instead of the Starkiller base, so Starkiller base also for me isn't Starkiller base, but it's actually like part of this network of sort of like stations. Like there are basically all these I don't know, this is just an idea I have. There's all these different installations on a bunch of asteroids and other planets that they've managed to discreetly set up through like their proxies and the organizations that they fund. And it's basically kind of like some some massive like EMP type thing, of which the Starkiller base is the head of. But basically, what the EMP does is it'll shoot like towards designated target, and it will completely like shut down all systems on like ships and stuff like that. But so what happens though is then so they don't shoot instead, because for those of you who are watching, Killhoon and I actually did a 3-night. We watched a recut of the sequel trilogy, which made them bearable. It actually managed to make the third actually a real movie, not a good movie, but a real movie. And so one of the changes that they had in that was, instead of doing the Starkiller base blowing it up that early, they just had a Star Destroyer show up, and so. But yeah, and I think that worked better. But yeah, so that whole battle thing happens. Rey gets kidnapped, but the thing is, another thing they don't reveal that it's that Kylo Ren is Han Solo's son until the confrontation between them. And so, he kidnaps Rey, and blah 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 blah, and then they go back to the Resistance base. And so, like the Resistance is basically more of like a mercenary force, a collection of basically. So think of like a mix between just like young Antifa types who just want to like fight the system. So there's those, and then there's old former rebellion people who want to relive their glory days, and then there are some Mandalorians, and then so it's just like a mishmash. It's not like an organized group. It's more like a kind of.
The reason
like,
why I was going more with a Blackwater vibe would be like, because if you want like jobs done discreetly that's not going to be on official national records, you want a competent mercenary force which enlists former like special forces and stuff.
Okay, so maybe not the young brash
like
people,
the Antifa, like no, they would be a liability.
No, but I was thinking like Mandalorians, and then you got some maybe some Trandoshans, and then you have former officers of both the Rebellion and the Galactic Empire. So maybe like trying to think. I don't know which Imperial officers didn't die who actually made an appearance in the OT, but I don't know. Maybe like one of them something back to the OT. But yeah, no. So you have that. So both Imperial, and then also the forces. Yeah, like various groups, whether they're sort of from other cultures or if they're former New Republic Special Forces, or I don't know. So there's something like that. But yeah, and then so basically similar to you. However, I like the idea of the disgraced Leia type thing, and she kind of went and used a lot of her wealth because she's wealthy. She's Princess Leia.
Princess of a planet that doesn't exist. Oh,
yeah. Maybe also do New Alderaan. Maybe do that kind of like in Canada, like a colony. Maybe that's where the Blackwater's based. I don't know. I think an interesting.
Yeah, that would work.
Yeah, but so yeah, there's that, and then but yeah, instead of so they go back to that planet. They meet Leia, all that, and then instead of the shooting raid destroying the planet, because like, come on, that's stupid. I'd still have it on Ilum. I think that would be cool, but they should call it Ilum. And that's sort of like their headquarters. But so the whole thing happens where they go try to rescue Rey, Han Solo, and I'm trying to keep this as close to the original one as possible. I'm challenging myself to actually work within the parameter of a lot of these plot beats. So Han Solo is still gonna die. But we do that. There's like, no, that's not how the Force works. And then we have the whole confrontation. And that's the first time that Kylo Ren takes off his mask, and reveals himself to be none other than Jason Solo. And same thing happens, of course. And they tried to escape and all that, but at the same time, what the First Order has done, like what they're doing during that time, is they managed to like sort of unleash their sort of basically remember that episode of the Clone Wars? It was the Malevolence arc, that weapon it has.
Oh yeah.
So basically it's a much larger version of that. But the thing, it doesn't just shoot from Star Killer Base. It basically shoots beams like through hyperspace to all these different sort of like asteroids that have sort of things on it. So it's kind of like
that You remember from the Trooper story in the Old Republic that weapon, that Imperial weapon that could shoot through hyperspace and shoot ships out?
I actually never finished the Trooper one, but
It's at the end of the first act, I think.
okay. No, but yeah, no. So instead of Starkiller Base, it's like this giant EMP that like travels through hyperspace to all these different things, bounces off, and so what it does is it's targeting basically whatever the New Republic's equivalent of Pearl Harbor is. So what it does is it deactivates all of these like ships and stuff, and so yeah, and so it just but then it manages. So basically, they manage to destroy or at least cripple, and maybe like you'll have like ships that are coming out and you'll have like ships that are picking them off or something too, and then they manage to, instead of like doing a Death Star of the planet, you have like ships that come out of hyperspace, and they manage to they just bombard the planet or something, and they destroy the New Republic fleet, and so yeah, and then in the meantime, you have they realize like where this base is with the mercenary base. Also, maybe some separatist leaders and battle droids they have with them too. That would be kind of cool. But
HK droids.
No, not H. I wouldn't go that far, but
well, I mean, they're Blackwater. They should be able to afford it.
Oh, maybe like HK-88 or something. I don't know. Oh, by this point, it would probably be HK 1026. 1000. No. 1024.
I do HK like 189 or something.
189. HK 189. Something that would be interesting. But yeah, it would look much sleeker though instead of the bulky. But yeah, no.
What do you mean? It still have to be rusty for nostalgia.
Well, like make him look more like HK-50 or make him gold. I don't know. But yeah, no. So you have that.
Not gold. He's an assassin droid. Make him fucking camo.
That would be interesting. But yeah, no. So they're gonna activate the EMP again, and because they're gonna launch it against, I don't know, New Alderaan. I don't even know if they're New Alderaan. That's really realistically where they would set up. Maybe yeah, but wherever they're sort of hidden, the mercenary hidden bases. So yeah, and then so I would have it so that they're about to activate that, and then that's when they do the whole the scene. It's like, oh, we need to destroy this thing, but it's like they don't actually destroy the planet. They're just destroying that base, which has like massive shields and stuff. So they have to destroy the shields, and maybe you have like Finn inside who has to deactivate them before they do it, and then he fights Phasma or something like that. And then it ends also with Rey and Kylo Ren fighting, but they're both like not quite evenly matched. But it's just something they just end up getting divided by the like maybe I don't know why there'd be an earthquake if it's not being destroyed, or by like there's like the destruction of the facility like causes like debris to rain down, and they manage to separate. But yeah,
see, that's why I would have it actually be like a ground battle while they have a duel. Like that's why I would have a ground battle on like.
Oh, okay, like maybe like a Rogue One style. Okay.
They were divided like as soon as Jaina cut down Kylo's like knee or something, like stormtroopers pull him back, and that's like why they're divided. But then like they're taking too much fire that she can't deflect. That's why I would have a ground battle there, and it would be like Blackwater against the First Order on the ground.
So yeah, I think then that's a good idea. But then after it's destroyed, they sort of do a quick like evacuate of like they have like drop ships come in and pick them up and take them away, and then this sort of leaves the rest of the First Order in the ashes, and a lot of their troops died from the explosion or something like that. And then there's still those First Order ships to deal with, and so maybe whoever.
I would also have Blackwater actually have like some like
how we're calling them Black. We're just calling them Blackwater.
I know we're just calling them Blackwater, but I'd have Blackwater have a few small warships too, instead of just having only fighters.
Yeah, no, I'd have them. That's a good. Like they maybe have some old Corellian corvettes.
Well, not old. I'd have them like have
newer. Okay.
new modern, but like frigate
So,
size.
so maybe like a modern, like a sleek sort of updated version and recolored too of the Hammerhead. That would be cool.
Yeah.
That would be, but,
I just say like frigate size in general. I wouldn't really care about the design.
okay, yeah, but yeah, no, that's a good idea. And so there's that, and then so they end up escaping. But then the first order fleet is still out there, and it's still, regardless, it destroyed the Republic fleet and it bombarded like one of the major worlds, and so maybe a lot of the New Republic leadership was executed and scattered, kind of like if like DC's attacked, you have like all these different, like you'll have the contingencies.
Olympus has fallen.
And basically, like, and maybe like in the Rise of Skywalker, you'll have the new Chancellor who's like the Minister of Agriculture or something.
No, you have to make it like the Minister of Defense, then he establishes like a military dictatorship.
Well, that could lead to a completely different standalone movie.
I mean, but
or who sides with the First Order. But that would actually that would be interesting.
For me,
but I think that would be taking it a little too off what I'm trying to do, because I'm trying to make it stick to the general basic
and
general
for
formula.
me, I try to make it like realistic, more within the context that they did kind of give us.
Mm-hmm.
And then change like a few things. Like in mine, I'd actually have the Republic be the aggressors. Well,
interesting.
Because like it would be Blackwater attacking their forward operating base that they were going to be preparing for an invasion from. And that's why I'd have it be like a false flag, like Blackwater attacked the First Order first. So the First Order was kind of justified in a war for revenge. It's kind of like how Pearl Harbor and all.
So yeah, okay, that works. I mean, for you at least. But of course, I think you and I are having different, like, basically using different strategies and describing.
Trust me, every Star Wars fan probably has their own way of redoing the movie. So
yeah. Like, okay, so then what I would do is Lord. I don't know. Let's call him Lord L. Kilborn. Elron? No, not Elron. I don't know. Just Lord Mustafa. Lord Mustache. No, Lord. Let's just call him Lord. Let's just call him Lord Adolf or something. Lord Benito.
How about
Lord Bashar.
But Bashar al-Assad, yeah. Of the shooty at the shot.
Let's just call him. Let's just call him. Well, God. Let's call him. No. Let's call him Lord Chad. Just Lord Chad.
Okay, so, Lord Chad.
So Lord Chad, basically, is like, you return to me. Basically the same thing that he does in that, except so they abandoned their base, and then the few battalions of stormtroopers that weren't like destroyed in that giant blast, because the thing is, like, the seismic power generators in there, so it would have caused a massive explosion that would have killed a lot or whatever. So, and then you have the Blackwater. They return to the Blackwater planet, but they're like, oh no, shit! Like the New Republic. Let's say like the New Republic lost over 2/3 of its navy, and so it only has certain small elements that have basically been ordered to scatter to different places until they can get back together. But the First Order is still not large enough to be able to conquer the whole galaxy. So, and then it kind of like, then it ends with her going to go find Luke Skywalker, who's not going to be anywhere near as much of a pussy as he was in the original. But yeah, no, that's my thing. So basically, it's the similar. So I'm basically going for. I'm not going to do this for the Rise of Skywalker, but basically the same story, or narrative, not necessarily story, but narrative plot point or like plot points. However, you have a I want to make I'd make a dynamic, an actual dynamic, because like you know how you had you had Han, Leia, Luke, and Chewie. So similar to that, I would do a Poe, Rey, Finn, um, yeah, Rey, Poe, Finn, and then I guess Chewie.
Oh, also how I would change Han's death. Like Han would still die. I forgot to mention this, but he would be one of the Merryweather generals. And Kylo confronts him and kills him to destabilize their command.
Interesting.
And also
I changed it to Merryweather now.
Blackwater, Merryweather.
Yeah.
We're just whatever. We've already kind of concreted them as Blackwater.
Yeah.
But on to the
Blackweather.
next film. So
Actually, do you think maybe we would go for 3 hours 25 minutes? Maybe we just want to do a part 2 tomorrow,
yeah, that could work.
or if not tomorrow, then the day after.
Yeah, let's shoot for tomorrow. We'll get into Blackwater shenanigans. I think you're actually gonna find mine kind of for my next film. It will shadow a lot of the last film, but it also takes some tropes from history that I'm thinking.
Yeah, and then I also so what I think we should do for the next one when we talk. So you and me finish the movies, how we would change the movies, and then after that, we'll talk about some of the maybe a little bit culture war stuff, sort of like with Kathleen Kennedy and all of that, and just sort of the just sort of all those maneuverings and we're going to pose questions as it relates to certain questionable decisions that they made during the movie and during filmmaking, and certain decisions that they made in general. But am I making sense?
Yeah, you are.
Okay. So anyway, I think we should just end it there. Thanks everyone for tuning in. This was a little more casual.
18th and a half hour of talking about Star Wars.
Well, yeah, no, but this isn't the same thing. This is something else. Right. Yeah, no, but yeah, thanks for joining us. We will either, depending on how tired I am, either tomorrow or the next day, and we will see you then. Thanks for watching.